I start this meeting at 7:01, and I see, just give me a minute, I see all board members are present. Just as a reminder that this is being recorded. We are now on to item number 2, approval of tonight's agenda.
I move approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
We'll do Reed second. Any questions or comments, board? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. We are now on to item 3, comments from the board and superintendent. Nancy?
So I've been very busy zooming around a lot in meetings. I wanted to thank Christina Ballantyne and Aaliyah Wilson for their support ongoing for completion of our presentation slides to AEC this year. It became a very short timeline, and I appreciate the additional all hands on deck effort that's being devoted towards this. So that's taken up a lot of my time in the past week or so. I also have been involved in advocacy with the Santa Clara County School Boards Association Legislative Committee. We now have a mission and bylaws, beginning of bylaws. And an item proposed for action at our next Santa Clara County School Boards meeting, which is next week. I appreciated participating in some of the back to school nights. And what struck me is that there were classrooms that looked like classrooms. There were classrooms that were virtual emoji built classrooms, and that some classrooms actually were homes, because you got a chance to see interactively who was there in that. And I really appreciate everyone's openness and vulnerability in sharing those spaces that are public spaces, but now have become intimate places in which we are to engage. So I have a deeper appreciation of the experience, and thank you for letting me into your classrooms, whether it be virtual, our traditional classroom, or those places that you're engaging from home. So I appreciate all that work that staff and families and students are doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Jeff?
I don't really have a lot to add to that. I've been just busy with work and balancing out the family requirements and work. So.
Thanks, Jeff. Bridget?
Okay, so this week and last week, I took lunches over to the shelter and checked in a little bit with everybody there. And at Sunnyvale Middle School, I've been volunteering with ELD1, EL support and tutorial with our English language learners. And that was super fun because I really got a window into some of the language arts assignments that are being assigned at middle school, getting to know one another and helping the kids interview each other in breakout rooms, and kind of easing the conversation a little bit. But the assignments were so thoughtful, and the kids were so open and ready to connect with one another and with me that I really loved it. I felt like I was in the classroom, so that was exciting. And then this morning I got to go over to virtually to Columbia Middle School and work with their ELD1 class, and that was just a joy as well. So I've had some fun being in classrooms and seeing the organization, and the teachers are Zoom jockeys. They're just completely proficient and putting people in breakout rooms and popping in, and the kids are learning how to share their screens in another language. For me, that would be very challenging to go to learn how to work the technology while someone's speaking to me in another language. So I was very impressed. And then I also went to the open houses, and I just want to commend everybody for their organization and professionalism and the dedication, because I know it takes so much time to prepare to meet with people, and I felt like everyone I met with they were very warm and inviting and caring to their families. So that was just amazing. And then I worked with Nancy and some other people on the Legislative Action Committee. And the letter that Nancy is talking about that we worked on will be around funding school lunch, free school lunch, through the end of the year instead of just through December. So I'm kind of trying to write letters of encouragement and figure out how to get that to go along. So that's it for me.
Nice.
Thanks, Bridget. Go ahead, Reed.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. And it's great to hear that you're in the classroom. And I would love to, I mean, it sounds like that means that we can have parents in the classroom too. And I'm excited to hear how that's going for our families. Let's see. So I just wanted to say that Mike and Michelle and Paulie, since Paulie's here as well, and it's true that they all did an awesome job with the COVID-19 back to school session that I listened to, and I think it was pretty well attended. And I will say that the League of Women Voters did a really good job asking questions, and definitely enjoyed that. I attended the dawn brunch for the first time, and just wanted to let you all know that we have this whole new young, vibrant, excited group of people that are running for election. I couldn't figure out if it's because I'm getting old or if it's because they're actually young. And I think it's a little bit of both. But we do have some really young, excited people running for office in Sunnyvale too, in some of our districts. So just be on the lookout. I feel like things are changing, and the old guard is going out and the new guard's coming in. So that was interesting. I had my neighborhood association meeting this past week, and I had Sharice Brandell come speak, and she talked about the Lakewood Library. And that hasn't been top of mind for us because we've had a lot going on in the school district, but good to know that it's moving along. And it was great that the neighborhoods are interested and excited about the Lakewood Library happening. And did attend a couple of back to school nights, a little bit of Cherry Chase and Cumberland. It's fun to see how different principals do it differently. At Cumberland, Lori did it all virtual for her principal welcome. At Cherry Chase, Gloria did it live. Just fun to participate and hear how the different principals do their thing, and it was good. We had our Sunnyvale Education Foundation meeting this week, and I think that Bridget is well aligned to take over as the school board rep. When I step out, she's been attending all the meetings, and I had to leave early and she stayed. And so I'm really excited about her stepping in. It's not official yet, but I anticipate that will be happening. So I'm happy. Bridget, thank you for your work with SEF and your willingness to do that. And then lastly, Nancy, I wanted to let you know we do have an annual education conference committee meeting next week. I didn't think we had it scheduled, but then I looked on my calendar and I was happy to see, that it's actually on the calendar. Nancy had shared with me that it's been pretty rough with trying to get the conference sessions videotaped, and they didn't give them a lot of time, and I've sort of felt out of the loop. So Nancy's been giving me some feedback, so hopefully I'll have more information for you guys next week if there's anything more that we need to know. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Reed. I was just going to briefly mention the forum on schools reopening last Wednesday from the League of Women Voters. It was great to be with, it was a really great group of, there was parents and the high school student representative and one of the teacher union representatives. So it really was a great evening. And I loved the last question that we were all asked was, what is one silver lining from this? And it was just a fantastic way to end. Everyone shared kind of all the different pieces. And I left feeling, even though this is a really hard time, I left feeling hopeful, right? That this is a group. And the last person who shared, which actually was Paulie, kind of put it all together and said, we really, truly are better together, this whole group. And it just was a great way to end that event. I attended some back to school nights as well, also for my own kids. And lost my notes here. Oh, and then also I just have been the last week and spending a lot of time reading emails and responding to them, which I'm sure all the boards have been reading them as well. And then also talking to a few community members about the various virtual school and independent study and things that are working and things that are a struggle. And that is all for me. So now Dr. Gallagher.
Thank you. So in addition to the items that you all mentioned, back to school nights and the League of Women Voters event, most of what I've been doing will be included in my presentation, so I won't go over that here. I would like to tell you though that we've gotten clearer guidance on how to spend the learning loss mitigation funds. And so Cabinet will be working on that in the next week or so. And we can bring a plan to you in the next meeting or so. So you can look forward to that.
Thank you. We are now on to item 4, comments from the Sunnyvale Education Association. There's an official representative. If you want to raise your hand, that would be helpful. We'll give it just a moment, but not seeing any. Okay, we will move on to item 5, comments from the California School Employees Association. So if there's an official representative from that association who would like to speak, please use your raise hand feature. We'll give it just a moment. All right, I'm not seeing any. Aaliyah, you're not seeing either, right? Okay. We are now on to item 6, comments from the public. As a reminder, this portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provisions of the Brown Act preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Time limits allocated to public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per topic. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. And as a reminder, there will be time for public comment on agendized items during each agenda item. So this portion of public comment is usually for items that are not on the agenda. So if there's anyone who would like to speak right now, please use the raise hand feature. And can someone give, I always forget because I do this on different devices. And when I'm using my husband's, I don't remember where the...
It should be on the bottom right of your screen as a participant, just to be able to raise your hand.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have to click on the participant and then go to the bottom. I'm guessing most people want to speak to the review and discussion reopening plan.
Yeah. All right, I'm not seeing any right now. We'll give it just a moment longer. All right, Aaliyah, you're not seeing any as well, right?
There's 2 now.
Oh, there's 2 now. Okay. Aaliyah, if you could take care of that, that'd be great.
Okay, first up is Matthew Spangler, and then it's ESVEIDY. It will be after Matthew. And Matthew, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you should be able to talk.
Hey, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, but you can't see me. You can just hear me. Is that right?
Correct. Or we just see your name.
All right, all good. Hey, my name is Matt Spangler, and I've got a fifth grader in Cherry Chase. And I'd just like to sort of describe some of the concerns that we've had with Acellus. We're doing the independent study with him, the independent study option. But before I do that, I want to preface, say a few comments at the beginning here. First, we're really thrilled that the district has allowed independent study as an option. Our son has thrived under this sort of thing, both in the spring this year and again so far in the fall. So I don't want you to take these comments as like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We would like to keep the independent study as an option and just find ways to improve the Acellus portion of it. Secondly, I want to compliment some people here that I've already spoken to, both board members and Tasha Dean, who have been very responsive so far to what I've brought up. So all that is to say thank you very much. But yeah, our experience so far with Acellus has been very mixed. Some of the modules are fine. Other modules, though, seem to have one of three problems. Either number one, factual errors. Number two, something that would seem to me to be very poor pedagogy. And thirdly, some of the modules seem to be framed in a way that are insensitive to issues of class or diversity. So I don't want to go too far into the weeds of examples, but I'll mention two examples quickly, and then I'll end with a suggestion for maybe how I would like to see us go forward. First, we did a reading comprehension module this week where there was a book that the students were reading from, but the passages were cherry-picked from throughout the book. So the students didn't read a continual passage. Rather, they read like page 36, page 68, page 86. So it didn't hold together in a sort of logical way. And then there were these questions about the reading, which in some ways didn't really make sense because you hadn't read the entire book. We Googled the book, and it was some book that's been published online, something I hadn't heard of. I assume maybe Acellus chose it because it doesn't have copyright issues. But as a learning thing and trying to inspire my fifth grader to read, this wouldn't seem to be very good pedagogy. My point isn't that all modules are this way, but some of them are. Another module was describing numbers, and the example that the teacher was using was that, that billionaires are the founders of companies, and if you're making in the tens, you're probably mowing lawns. And this sort of naturalization of an American wage structure would seem very problematic to me. But again, not all the modules are this way, just some of them. So let me end with a suggestion here. I mean, if there's ways that we can communicate these concerns to Acellus and that they can maybe change future modules along the lines of problems we're experiencing now, that would really be great. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. We appreciate it. And then next up is ESVEIDY. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you should be able to talk.
Hi, good evening. I am a parent of a kindergartner at Bishop Elementary. My question is, I don't know if you're going to address this. The plan for kindergarten Zoom times live is starting October 5th. I have heard from the teacher that there was a plan to starting October 5th do Zoom for kindergartners live from 8:30 to 11:45. And I just wanted to, my concern is for a kindergartner, I see that for my child, it's really hard. It would be very hard to stay live for, like over 3 hours and 15 minutes. So I don't know if that's going to be addressed in the reopening plan.
Thank you very much. That looks like it for public comment for non-agenda items.
Thank you, Aaliyah. All right, we are on now to item number 7. Well, 7's presentation, but 7A. So support of Measure M for Fremont Union High School District. And I think first we'll turn over to Dr. Gallagher to introduce this. You're on mute.
I'm very pleased to introduce Paulie Bove, Superintendent of Fremont High School District. And I'll kind of say on a personal note, in my first couple months as superintendent, I've really appreciated Paulie's guidance and colleagueship, if that's a word, and friendship. This is a difficult time, and she's been great. I think Board, you know that we've been meeting about once a week, along with the superintendent in Cupertino. So that's been great. But today, Paulie's going to talk about Measure M, which is a very important measure for, I believe, for our community. And I'll let Paulie take it away.
Okay, well, Mike, I just have to tell you, you stole my thunder already, because I was going to start this by saying you've got a new superintendent who's great, who's fun, who really collaborates, who's open, and I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with him. I obviously miss Ben. I've known him for years, but it was a joy to have Mike step in and just be a great partner in this work in this incredibly difficult time. So I think we're kind of keeping each other sane. It's really cool. And it's nice to have Cupertino Elementary along with us. So that's excellent. I think you have my presentation. May I first say it's really cool to have you have the board dais behind you. It's like amazing, right? It's way better than those cardboard cutouts they have at baseball games. You know, it's like really, really excellent. I think it's good. And we don't have such a cool virtual background. I, of course, select the one that means I'm in the weeds, which is how I feel every day of the week these days. But anyway, so thank you for having me tonight. I'll stop chattering and see if we can see the presentation. Does someone have it, I hope? Jesus, thank you for sharing. Okay, I always, especially now, like to start with pictures of our kids because we're woefully missing them. You know, I mean, we don't get to see them. We certainly don't get to hug them and enjoy them in the way we have in the past. So this is a great picture of 5 of our students, and I just had to start that way. So let's go to the next slide, please. I wanted to give you a very quick update because our distance learning really matches a lot of what you're doing in your district, and that's because of this collaboration we spoke of. We've really been proud of the increased instruction that we've been able to provide this fall as opposed to the emergency remote learning we were doing before. There's tons more synchronous learning, 90-minute periods, 2 per week per class. And then Wednesday we do a wonderful set of tutorials, office hours, check-ins, advisories where we're doing some anti-racism work, we're doing some sexual harassment work. We're just able to give a lot of opportunities for students. And so we're really excited about this. We have a new learning management system called Schoology, and that has held us together in ways we didn't anticipate. So we're pretty excited actually about the way it's going. So you can go to the next one. We have had lots of good supports. Our mental health staff is working like crazy. We have ways for students to refer students. We have students to refer themselves, parents and students. Everyone can say, hey, please reach out to someone, they need some help. I think you know we're collaborating on food service, and a shout out to your board and Mike for helping us figure out how we're going to deal with the students that we have at the homeless shelter and provide them with more food. There's obviously the Wi-Fi hotspots and the Chromebooks, and we actually have an agreement with Xfinity and Comcast to help our community sign up for Comcast under our name. So they don't have to put their name or address or anything on it. And for $10 a month, we can provide them that. So that's really exciting. We've done a lot of communication just like you have. And we enjoyed our virtual back to school nights too. I was glad to hear you talking about that. And there's a lot of information on our website. So let's go to the next one. And I just wanted you to see that we celebrated our graduates because some of these you may even recognize from your school. So we did drive-by graduations and we thought, oh man, this isn't going to be cool at all. But it was so amazing because families were in cars with kids and the kids loved it. They'd get out and do selfies. It was honestly, our staff was out shouting at them and cheering them on and crying. And it was just absolutely delightful. So I just wanted to tell you that we found a way to have graduation and that made me happy. Okay, let's go to the next one. We've been able to do a few in-person activities. I suspect you have too, but it's mostly athletic conditioning. And you can see that they're well distanced as they should be. And we hope with the better air that we're going to be able to start that again. I know that the seasons have been postponed, but we're still not too hopeful they're going to happen. But let that conditioning begin, because that does help kids to get out and feel better if they're able to exercise. So you can go to the next one. We had a lot of staff. I don't know about you, but we're getting all ready for school. We're thinking about it, and somebody goes, well, we have to distribute material. And then we all stopped and got silent and went, how in the heck are we going to distribute material? We can't see them. So thank goodness we've been distributing food. We use that as a system. And you can see the people here making it work, whether it was in cars or occasionally when somebody walked up and we're stretching to keep our 6-foot distance. But our staff was terrific. They really managed to get all the materials out to students. Thank you. Our bond program, I'll go very fast through this, has been going forward full force because we could. That was legal, and we did it. It gives us a chance not to disrupt our classes and to save some money. So you can see the number of projects. Yes, we're crazy. You should never have this many projects going at the same time, but it seems to be working well, and we're proud of our team that's doing it. Let's go to the next one. I'll just quickly show you. There's some pictures. Upper left is the new lobby on the Lindbergh Gymnasium, and we did some seismic retrofitting work. Right is Homestead's new Guidance and Student Service Center. And that's what, we take things down to the lower left. That's where we renovate a classroom. It looks like that before we start putting it back together. Okay, let's go to the next one. And finally, we're here for what I said, but I wanted you to know before we got to this that we're worth investing in. We're still trying to do the best we can, just like you are in every aspect of the work we do. But we would like to renew our $98 parcel tax. It's been in place since 2004. It's now Measure M for the renewal of 8 years, and it will be on the ballot in November. It does what it's always done for us, was allow us to keep a constant stream of income, and keeps our highly qualified teachers and staff, and keeps us from reducing course offerings. And we've been grateful for it for all the 16 years we've had it, and we'd like to be able to continue it, especially in these challenging times. So if we go to the next one, that's the actual wording. You can see that there's a senior exemption, and all funds benefit local high schools. There is no administrative costs in this at all. It's about $5 million that we're grateful to get from our community. So you'll see Measure M on the ballot. You can go to the next one. And I just am here to answer any questions, but thank you for letting me do this. And we hope you can think about supporting us in this effort. I more than ever feel like I meant what I said at the League of Women Voters. We are all in this together, and I think we are better for it. That may be the biggest silver lining for me, is how much we've stopped being so focused on all the things we each have to do, and taken a breath and held hands and tried to do it together. So thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, Paulie. Board, is there any clarifying questions before we open it up for public comment, and then we'll go back to us to discuss? All right, so I'll now open up if there's any public comment on this item. Please use the raise hand feature now. Aaliyah, are you seeing any?
I'm not.
Okay, thank you. All right, board, and I think Reed, go ahead, Reed.
Yeah, Paulie, I just wanted to say I'm 100% supportive of your parcel tax, and I think I have my name on your measure. And I just got contacted by Connell and Kathy to ask if I could find some kids to be on the collateral. So my son volunteered with a group of his friends. So I'm really excited to support you, and I'm sure that the community will support you for another 8 years. So
thank you so much, Reed. We really appreciate all your help, and it's, great.
Thanks, Reed. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Gallagher.
Okay. Board, I think what would be helpful is if the board were to so indicate, I could write a letter on behalf of the district indicating our district's support of Measure M. I think that's what.
Do you want to do a resolution? Because that's often what we'll do, is a resolution, or at least that's what Santa Clara County School Board does. I don't know.
If we wait to do a resolution though, then we have to wait till our next meeting. And just if the board all is supportive, we can give the direction to staff to write a letter of support. I mean, so we could do a resolution later, but I think
no, that sounds
if
good.
the board is on board, I think getting a letter saying we're supporting soon would be helpful.
Okay, I'm in.
Yes, I would certainly be very supportive for Dr. Gallagher to write a letter indicating that there is board endorsement of this measure. I appreciate the collegiality and the collaboration that we've done in the past to support one another in asking the community for funding. It's unfortunate that we're not able to get all the funds that we need from Sacramento, and so we need to look to our community to help us provide the high level quality of programs and facilities that we need for our students to grow and thrive. And as a elementary school district, we want them to continue that progress into high school. So we deeply support your efforts.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Bridget.
So I got a yard sign. I'm very excited about that. You know, I think there's some virtual things we can do as individual board members, right? Like we could, how do we like your page? You have is there a specific campaign that is being shared, or?
There is a website, and we'll try to get that to you. I mean, technically here, I'm here to inform, not to advocate. It's hard though to look at me and know me and think I'm not advocating. I understand that, but
well, I'm just saying if we wanted to personally on this side, or if people
be glad to get that information to you. Thank you so much.
I don't think there's anything more I can add. I support it as well. So.
Yeah.
All right, so we will have Dr. Gallagher on behalf of our district write a letter of support for Measure M. And then Paulie, do you think a resolution would be helpful as well, or that would not be necessary? What do you think?
I think that your letter will allow us to indicate to the community that you've endorsed us or support us in this effort, and that is worth a lot. I mean, they trust you, and if you say you trust this measure and us, then that matters.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, staff, for doing that. Thank you, Paulie, for coming. And we are excited about continuing to work with you and
Yes.
kind of build those bridges of those, you know, as the kids come to us in kinder and then through 8th grade, well, it's preschool, some of them, and then we send them off to you. And we appreciate the collaboration. Hope we can continue that.
I know we can, and we'll try to send some graduation pictures back to you again this time, because I think it's really fun to see they grow up and graduate and go off to the world in great ways. So thank you.
Thank you.
And they come back to our school district to serve as board members.
They do. And then sometimes they also come back as teachers and classified employees and other employees. It's just fantastic.
Thanks for all you do, Paulie. I know it's especially right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Mike. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Paulie.
Thanks, Paulie.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we are now on to 8, which is review and discussion, and we have several items there. So we will start with our first one, which is the discussion on the reopening plan, and I will turn it over to Dr. Gallagher.
Thank you. So I'm going to say a few words before I get into the actual proposal, just to kind of lay the groundwork for you. I want to start out by saying this. On Monday, we sent out to the community a letter indicating that it was that I would be recommending, and it is my recommendation, that we not return for full reopening until January. And so that is sort of one of the bottom lines, I would say, that I felt it was important for our community to hear for planning and for certainty. And even though it's not the certainty that we wish we were in, I think it's important for us all to move forward to know the direction we're going in. However, there's another piece of it too, and that's really what I want the focus to be tonight. And it comes under the terminology we'd like to use is gradual phased reopening. So what we really are in right now is a gradual phased reopening of schools. So that's how I'd like us to focus. What we want to do as a school district, and I think that's all of us, I think it's parents, it's teachers, it's certainly the school board, I know, all of us in the community, is we want to reopen when it's safe. We want to do it safely. And we know that our most important function is teaching and learning and kids learning. And we also know in this district that we place especially high value on social emotional learning and social emotional well-being. And those are two things that we need to take stock of and pay attention to. And I think both are challenged at the moment. Both are challenged. I could not be more proud of the work that our teachers are doing to provide the best possible educational program for our kids. I'm just amazed. I couldn't have imagined that it could be done as well as our teachers are. And of course, our teachers are doing that. But they are putting in hours and hours and tremendous amount of their own, certainly their time, their effort, their creativity, at a time that's very difficult for all families, especially including teachers' families and including the families of staff. So we need to pay attention to that. So while we're concerned about the social emotional well-being of our students, we also need to be concerned about the social emotional well-being of our staff as we move forward. I think you all know I could talk for an hour just on that subject because it's really, really important to me and our teachers. And it's important that I think that our teachers that are in the audience hear that as well, that we know how hard you're working, and we want you, if there's some way that we can pace ourselves to get through this, it's not a sprint, it's going to be more of a marathon. We want you to know that we're with you on that. We want to thank our employee groups, SCA, CSCA, SCAMP, who represents our management team. As I said, together we share a common interest in providing the best possible instructional program for our students. And so this term gradual phased reopening, we expect that that's what's going to be in the guidance that comes from the county in the next week or so. So what we expect is probably Friday or Monday, I don't know exactly where it is, the county may announce that, or I suppose it's the state will announce that we are now firmly in the red category, which means that there is substantial risk of exposure to COVID in our community. So substantial risk is not where any of us want to be, but it's better than where we have been. There's progress happening, and that's really good. So under that sort of umbrella of substantial risk in the red zone, the state says that schools can begin to reopen. We don't have to do a waiver anymore if that's to happen in the next week or so. And the county's guidance, as I said, is going to be for schools to start planning a gradual phased reopening. So it's a not all at once. And I think when the news of this possibility came out about a week ago, unfortunately, the media took it up as schools are going to reopen in 2 weeks, which was unfortunately not the message that should have been sent, and was very confusing to people, because that's not really the recommendation of anyone, that schools suddenly reopen like that. It needs to be gradual and it needs to be phased. I think another really important element of that is for us to realize that changing teaching formats is not like turning on a light switch. So as I mentioned, it took considerable effort by our teachers to make the remarkable changes that they did to their practice for this fall. And so at some point in the future, if we were to switch to a hybrid model, or when we eventually return to in-person, that's going to be with considerable restrictions. It's not going to be the same in-person teaching that we were doing on March 13th. So that's going to take effort as well. And I think we need to recognize that transition that will be required in the planning process. And as I say that, I realize that there's teachers in the audience thinking, I'm just now going through these challenging times. of adapting my practice. And then now I'm hearing, and of course we know that there's going to be another change coming. So we need to be aware of that so that we can all cross the bridge together. If you remember the metaphor from the back to school, this is going to take work. So we want to provide a safe environment. We also want to provide a high quality teaching environment. And that it's not just like turning on a light switch. It's going to take planning as we move through. And I guess the last thing I would say is a phrase that I've started to say in the last couple of weeks around providing space and grace for everyone that we come in contact with during this time. We have to provide each other space and grace. So while I'm now talking about a gradual reopening, and there certainly will be parents and perhaps some staff that are wishing or hoping for a quicker reopening, those are real feelings and emotions and desires too that are based in a really challenging time. So we need to be able to listen to each other. We need to give each other a little bit of space and a whole lot of grace as we move through this time, and continue to do that. So the last thing I would say before I start going through the presentation itself is that what I'm going to present is going to be very flexible. I sent you a draft of it last night, and that draft changed this morning. And then I talked to some more people and it changed again. And then it changed about an hour ago. And it's going to change next week. And a lot of the change is going to come as conditions change. The change is going to come as we get more and more input. But we plan to move gradually through steps to return students to campus. So I'm going to begin sharing now. We can pick the right one. Okay, so what we've laid out here are 5 phases to return us to in-person instruction. And I can tell you that we've already started. This isn't something that we're going to start next week. We already started. In fact, if you remember back in June and July, we talked about building a foundation of safety and building on that foundation to slowly return kids back to school. And so this is really that same concept. So as we were developing safety protocols in July, that was with this concept in mind that first we were going to return staff, because if you remember in the spring, staff largely were not on campuses. Now teachers, I asked 3 or 4 principals in the last couple of days, what percentage of your teachers are teaching from their classrooms? And the answer is that they all gave me 50 to 60%. And it's not the same on every day. We're accommodating them. They have family challenges. They like to be on campus because they have access to their materials, and also they're increasingly feeling safe. And their colleagues are hearing that they feel safe, and that's encouraging other colleagues to come as well. It's also allowing us to test our safety protocols, which was the plan from the beginning, if you remember. On August 3rd, we actually had students and parents beginning in August, we actually started to have students and some parents on campus as we were distributing materials and devices. And that was an activity that had to happen, but it was also happening as we were implementing our safety guidelines. So this is all building that foundation of safety. So we actually have finished phase 1, and we're, if anything, already in phase 2. And on August 24th, the first portion of this creating support pods started with our collaboration with the city of Sunnyvale. Now, this particular support pod for our employees, the children of our employees, is actually at the Sunnyvale Community Center. But what we're learning from the city, because they worked on their programs all through the summer, and they have their safety protocols in place, we're able to learn from them and to build on that and adapt that to our school environment. So we already kind of started August 24th. I'm really excited, and Paulie mentioned this, that next week we'll actually have our first students on our campuses. And that's going to be with, again, a partnership with the city we're going to be able to bring the students from the homeless shelter onto one of our campuses to provide them instruction. And actually, we're not providing them instruction. All the support pods, the students are still enrolled in their regular classes. What happens is we're supervising their distance learning, if you will, supervising virtual school. So next week will be the first time we're doing that. It's also an opportunity for those kids, for us to provide the meal service to kids on campus. Again, implementing our safety protocols now with students on campus. In the next couple of weeks, we will be implementing support pods at our 4 Title I schools, and that work has already begun. For example, in the last couple of days, Rob and Tasha have been going out to each of those schools and doing safety walkthroughs with the principals. And those are really, really helpful and really, really necessary, because while we developed all these plans in July for how things should look based on the county guidance, when you get onto the ground at a real campus, everything's a little bit different, and principals know what the reality is going to be like, and principals need to know how to implement these practices. So we've already started that. So September 28th is a target date, just like I would say September 21st is a target date. All the target dates that you're going to see in this presentation are just that. They're targets, and they're optimistic. So we likely won't hit most of them, but if we don't set targets, we can't meet them. And I'm an optimist by nature. If those of you who know me, sometimes I need to be tempered with realism, and that's okay. So I'm recognizing that these are optimistic dates. It might not be the 28th. It might be a week later. It might be a few days later. It might be 2 weeks later. But we're going to try really hard to implement this program of support at our Title I schools for small cohorts, 14 students in each, up to 14, in compliance with the county guidance, so that we can start providing support for our students who are not connected. So you see the push and the pull there. Part of it is we want to go slow so that we can implement the safety protocols effectively. But we also feel some urgency because there's some students who, of course, just aren't engaging like they should. And so we want to start implementing things. So we'll start having more students on campus either at the end of this month, likely the beginning of next month. After we've done that, then we will expand to 6 more schools so that we'll have all 10. And that now we're starting to have more kids on more campuses. And so we have to do more planning. But hopefully we can build on the success of the first set as we go to the second. And eventually we want to be supporting more than just 14 students. So that's the October 26th. Again, probably optimistic, maybe close, like maybe as we move through the first couple, we'll realize, hey, we know what to do. We can expand this relatively quickly, or maybe not. We have to all be flexible. And you'll notice that I have our 4 guiding principles are throughout this presentation so that I don't forget them, and so that none of us forget them. So safety, equity, flexibility, and high quality teaching and learning. So the next phase, and you'll notice that the dates don't all go necessarily in order. There might be a better way of laying this out where there's a timeline that goes across and there's layers of time and color coded or something like that, because different things start at different times. But that's targeted student supports. It's not targeted student instruction necessarily, but targeted student supports might be, for example, support for one or several special education students that the teacher identifies as needing some special support that would be on campus. It might be a occupational therapist feeling like they need to work one-on-one, and the student feeling, or their family feeling that that's appropriate. Might be social worker services that that both parties feel would be better handled in person. All those ideas, we have to develop a plan for each one, and it'll be slow at the beginning, but over time we'll start to bring more students back when it is most appropriate for them to be on campus to provide those individual supports. We also, sometime in October, maybe by the end of October, start doing individual student assessments. one way of looking at that would be if a teacher feels as if they would prefer for assessments to be done in person, we want to provide an avenue for that to happen. We also have a challenge with special education assessments. This is an opportunity for those to happen in person because all this stuff is hard to do virtually. So we're, again, building on the foundation of safety to increase our supports for students. And this phase is all about small groups, targeted, and many times individual. So the fourth phase, and this is where it starts getting less and less specific because this is more in the future. And this is where larger groups of students are coming for perhaps portions of the school day to receive actual instruction. So for an example, perhaps kindergarten could be the first grade level that would come back maybe as early as right after Thanksgiving. So there's 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and the December holiday. Maybe, now again, optimistic Mike, we want to temper that. Like we want to make sure that we have all the safety protocols in place, our staff is ready, our families are ready, but that's a possibility. Maybe some students could come, maybe whole classes could come. We have to be able to accommodate families that aren't comfortable with families that are. That's going to be a challenge, but that's an optimistic goal that perhaps by the end of the calendar year, maybe we'll be able to have some small groups of students for their actual instruction on campus. I would say, I would categorize that as best case scenario, if I'm being honest. So that's phase 4. Phase 5 is a tiered reopening. And I think that's what most people would think of when they think of students back at school. And I think it's important to think of probably the best way to do this would be 1 grade level at a time, probably starting with the youngest students. So you notice like in phase 4, maybe some TK and kindergarten kids, then moving up to first grade, giving that time, see how our system handles it. I don't know how many weeks would need to go by to make sure that we have it down before we need to move to the next grade level. And I see that as at earliest, January 2021 activity that we would start to do. And I should say that middle school is far more complex, partly because of the age of the students. And I hate to get into science because that's not my thing, but we know that the older kids are, the more likely they are to transmit the virus. I think we know that. And then also just with the way that classes move on a campus and how crowded campuses are at the middle school level, that will be more challenging. That's not saying that it can't be done, but I think we need to be wary of that. I think most school districts that are talking about any kind of phasing are really focusing on elementary school first. So we need to, I think that's where we'll be focusing as well. So those are the phases. And I know that there will be a lot of questions and I welcome you to ask them and certainly welcome them from the public, and our whole team is here to do the best we can and actually to learn tonight and to adjust as we move forward.
Thank you, Mike. Board, is there any clarifying questions about anything? And then after we do clarifying questions, then we will have public comment and then we will go back to board for discussion.
Yeah, I had a couple of things, Michelle, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Reed.
Mike, I just wanted to ask, I know we had talked about doing a survey just to sort of get a pulse on our parents and our teachers. And I'm especially, I know probably a lot of our parents are eager for our kids to come back, but I know that our teachers have been really, really fearful in the past. I'm wondering if you think that's changed, and I'm sure that once we survey, we'll get a better pulse on that.
So we're going to do the Panorama Survey. Tosh, that's coming out fairly soon, right?
Yes.
So
We're
You're
planning.
asking about, are you asking about parents or are you asking about teachers or staff, Reed?
I mean, I want to know both, I guess, from you more how the teachers are feeling, because I'm sure you've been talking to them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking to some also, but I just wanted to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think at this point, as we go through different stages, we will ask them, the affected teachers at that point. We're pretty far from, like really far from saying all teachers are coming back. So we're not asking that at this point. But we are constantly checking in. And actually that's one of the first questions I ask every time I talk to a principal or when I meet with groups of teachers is, how are you doing? How are you feeling? If I ask the principal, how are your teachers doing? And they basically say kind of what you just said, Reed, is that they're working really hard, but in terms of being ready, not quite there because of safety concerns and also, well, a whole variety of concerns.
Okay, so do let us know when that survey is. Tasha, can you let us know?
Yes, it will be going out sometime next week, actually.
Great.
Go ahead, Bridget.
So we are going to survey the teachers and staff as well as the families and the students, or are we just doing families and students?
All three, parents,
All
students.
Okay, awesome. So
yeah, that's a good clarification. We're not necessarily asking the staff, are you ready to come back? But we're asking them other SEL questions.
well, you know, like last time we did the survey and it was the staff questions were very different. There was just like 2 questions about, it was like more distance learning related, and the staff responses were very clear. They gave very elaborate, long, they had a lot to say, you know, and they gave very detailed descriptions of their feelings and their struggles and their challenges and things. And so I think if we could have similar questions for the staff that we give to the families and the kids when we're just talking about how are you doing with this and what are your challenges and what are you seeing that's working. It might be slightly different because they're on the other end of it, but I think it'd be valid to know their similar feelings. I had a question. Is there any way you could share your screen again, Mike? Because I had a question about the, you know, just the weeks between when you're talking about bringing cohorts back on, not cohorts, the support pods. So I think it was,
It's
like, maybe it was earlier than that. It was phase 2 and yeah, kind of phase 2 and 3. So like the idea of bringing like the September 28th and October 12th and then October 26th. Is there a reason why there's just 2 weeks in between? Because I've looked at Los Altos School District and there was one other school district I looked at, like some other plan, but I don't know if that was like an earlier draft of theirs or something, but Los Altos is published and they specifically allow 3 weeks. And so then when I saw this and it was 2 weeks, you know, my question is like, why 2 weeks rather than 3?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. And I know we talked about that before, Bridget, which I appreciate. It may end up being 3 weeks. It's just the balance between, like I said, the urgency of getting kids back to support them, weighing that against like how fast can we realistically get things done. So
okay,
yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying like we would have this approach. So that's a little bit of something like we have this plan to roll things out and we're going to do it like methodically and get it done according to plan. Versus like I feel like, you know, when I was listening to the discussion about the Los Altos plan for 3 weeks apart, they specifically were giving the 2 week kind of, you know, testing time period for in case, you know, there was any illness that would appear, but also because they were at different sites, maybe that wouldn't matter as much, but also like just having, you know, been in a classroom, the first week back from anything is always any change is a super challenge, like for just transition, even with just, you know, older kids, whatever. And so like just the first week would probably be like after any break, not this crazy COVID thing, but like it's always like you have to reteach all the routines and you have to get, and it can be kind of a mess. And the second week is really when like, okay, we're in the flow. And that would be like, maybe that would be a good time to like check in and say, do we need to adjust? Or like, I mean, I just am nervous about having only 2 weeks to do all that before you like roll out the next one.
So you'd like us to go slow to make sure we get it right?
Well, if what you're doing is not to intentionally like roll out the same plan, but if you're trying to learn in between, which is what
I just want to do a quick reminder that right now is just clarifying questions, then we're going to do public comment, and then it will be board discussion.
Okay, sorry. I had one more clarifying question, and that was for the support pods. Those are with paras. When would the teachers be coming back in the plan? Is that phase 4 or is that phase 3? Is phase 3 targeted support also teachers?
Phase 3 is, yeah, some teachers. Yeah, they would. Phase 2 would not be teachers. Phase 3 would be teachers.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, board, is there any other clarifying questions?
I'm going to wait till discussion time.
Okay. All right, so we will now open it up for public comment. So if anyone from the public would like to speak about the reopening updates, please use the raise hand feature now. And we will wait just a moment to see how many we get before we move forward. So anyone who would like to speak to or about the reopening updates and plans, please use the raise hand feature right now. And we'll wait just a minute or so for people to get their hand raised. All right, so if there's anyone else who wants to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. It looks like we have 5 people who would like to speak on this item, so we will keep it at our regular 3 minutes per person. As a reminder, I don't always do this, but speak slowly for the translators. And also, if someone has shared something that you agree with, you can say, I agree with so-and-so. And all right, I think that is everything. So I will turn it over to Aaliyah to lead us through public comment. Thank you, Aaliyah.
Welcome. So first up, we have Vivek, then Rebecca Lucky, and then Wendy Smith. And if you can actually please state your name and just your affiliation, just if you're a parent, a family member, a staff member, teacher, community member, that just helps us with our record keeping. So with that, Vivek, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Okay. So I'm Vivek. I have a child in Ellis in Sunnyvale. So thank you very much, Michael, for sharing the status update as well as the opening plan. I think it's really glad that there is planning going on, and there are people who are really spending a lot of time thinking through this. I wanted to ask a very specific question around the phases you described. I did not see, and maybe I missed it, are there any specific metrics, numbers, etc., being followed to trigger these phases, or what are the triggers based on? You mentioned that dates can change, completely understandable, right? We're just glad we have a plan, but on what basis will each of these phases get triggered? And I take you back to the evolution of the California plan, which had specific phases and triggers of positivity rate, infection rate, and all those kind of stuff, right? Is the board or is your team, Mr. Michael, spending any time trying to decide what those triggers will be? Will it be availability of the teachers? Will it be survey results? Will it still be infection rates? I don't know. And I think that's very important to understand, because that's the kind of thing which provides transparency to what is really going on behind the scenes in triggering these phases. And without which, I think that there will be questions over and over from the public around, is this completely arbitrary, or is there more of some specific thought out numbers which you're monitoring at a local level, at a community level, to get this to? So if you can shed some light on that'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek.
Leah, just before you go on to the next one, I just want to share briefly. So the board, public, as you ask questions or make comments, board is collecting that, making notes about it. And then when we speak again, then we will ask those questions of staff.
Okay. Next up is Rebecca Lucky, then Wendy Smith, then Carlos Cabrera. And again, if you could just state your name and your affiliation, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Rebecca, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lucky. I'm the mother of 2 San Miguel girls in the Juntos program. They're in kindergarten and 2nd grade, and I've emailed staff and I've emailed you directly, and I've spoken at previous meetings, and I've expressed the hardships, the inequities, and the lack of respect for family well-being and women's issues, the decisions that have been made regarding virtual learning. So I just want to briefly walk you through my day with a kindergartner and a 2nd grader while I'm expected to be working full-time from home. So I'm basically both working as a teacher's assistant and a sustainability manager for a city. This means that I'm working over 10 to 12 hours a day, plus all of my other duties, such as cooking and cleaning. I log the girls in on at 8:30. Kindergarten gets out at 9:30, and my kindergartner is expected to wait until her group comes on. Well, that is hard to do since I'm trying to answer emails or I'm in a meeting and she gets distracted. So then she misses her session. But sometimes she makes it to say adios at 10 a.m. She is then in independent instruction to develop language skills, in independent instruction, which I have to help her with, and it's in Spanish. She should be receiving this in Spanish instruction to develop her language skills, but I really can't help her. So then I have to interrupt her sister in class who knows Spanish to help. And now she's distracted. The kindergartner finishes and is left bored because her sister is in class. And if she watches TV, the other sister will want to stop watching her class. We live in a tiny apartment with a ridiculous rent. So I have to play or provide snacks with my kindergartner. But I also have a meeting at the same time. So now I'm unable to actively be in my meeting, and I get strange looks from my colleagues and making their time unproductive. It's rather embarrassing. Normally the sisters would play and I can have them both do an activity. When I do have a meeting, the younger sister will interrupt her older sister, and now she is not getting work done. I actually heard one of the boys in her class say, "Why can't your mom take your sister and put her in another room?" My response is that I'm working. It's nice to have parenting advice from a 2nd grade boy. Now 11:45 hits, and now my 2nd grader is doing independent work, which is in Spanish, and she's expected to complete all this work by 2 p.m. to rejoin the class, which makes it hard to keep track of time if I'm supposed to be joining a meeting. I have to be involved to do the independent work, so it's not independent or hands-off as was claimed when we started virtual learning. I appreciate that the teacher has explained that the work can be done later, but with all due respect, there is no time. Remember, I'm already working over 10 hours a day. So, I think the main thing for me is that I'm getting close to having to take a 50% pay cut in order to provide education for my children. I want to know what the school district is going to do, I understand the slowly phasing in, but there are other school districts that are reopening, that are in the purple. They're not even in the red where we are at. One of the examples is the Menlo Park City School District. They are bringing back kindergartner and 1st graders on September 28th. And so I really want to urge the board, to urge staff, to, really bring these younger kids back, or, have less time in school, because
Thank you,
it's too
Rebecca.
long
Please wrap
from
up the
8 to
chat.
2.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry. Next up is Wendy Smith, then Carlos Cabrera, and then the last speaker is Jennifer. Wendy, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, there you go.
All right. My name is Wendy Smith, and as you guys know, I am a third grade teacher at Cherry Chase, and I'm also the president of the Sunnyvale Education Association, which represents the majority of the teachers in our district. And so I feel pretty confident speaking tonight on their behalf and listening to the reopening plan. And I thank Dr. Gallagher for this plan. We have talked a little bit about it. This is the first time I saw some actual dates. So a few of them are a little bit surprising. But some of the questions were asked about how staff was feeling, and I feel really confident talking about how staff feels. So teachers want nothing more than to come back. This has not been an easy year by any means. We miss our students. We miss teaching in the classroom. Teaching in a virtual school is just not the same. We know that. But I can tell you that we have worked very hard to establish a robust program in Sunnyvale School District. And I'm super proud of my members for what they have done and what I'm seeing come out of the classrooms. It's pretty amazing. If you have the opportunity to visit one of these classrooms, I encourage you to do so. But I can also tell you that they are afraid. They're afraid to come back too soon. And so I encourage you to continue to take the slow approach. We understand the frustration of parents because we ourselves are parents. I am teaching in one room while my daughter is doing virtual school in the other room. She has a problem on Zoom and I have to do the same thing and fill it. And I'm a single parent, so I understand, the hardships of that. But I also know the risk, and I'm not willing to risk my members' lives, my children's life, my life, to come back any sooner. And so I appreciate there being a slow rollout. I do hope that you'll keep teachers informed as you're talking about opening up pods on campuses. This is the first that many of my members have heard this. So they are going to be a little surprised that there are going to be kids on campuses. Please know that when we're talking about teachers coming back to campus, this is not a regular thing that you're seeing on campus. Teachers are staying in their classrooms. They're not socializing in the staff room. They're not going in the front office and talking and seeking things out. No, we're in solitary confinement in our classrooms. So when you think that teachers are coming back, they're really not coming back. They're back on campus in their classrooms, locked in their classrooms with the door locked. We're not mingling with each other. We're talking through Zoom while we're on campus with other of our teammates because we're just not doing that. So please don't get it in your mind that this is a regular environment and that teachers are coming back and, hey, 60% of the staff. I can tell you at my school, it is nowhere near 60% of our staff. Over a week period of time, people come in and out. Maybe that's where you get that high number, but we are not back just thinking that, hey, we're safer now. That's not the case. And so please, if that's the picture that you have in your mind, understand that's not how it is. It's not a regular environment. We don't eat in the staff room. We eat in our classrooms. If we eat at school at all, many of us leave campus because we don't feel safe eating in our classrooms. Okay? We're not mingling.
5 seconds left. Sorry.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate what you guys are doing tonight.
Thank you, Wendy. And then next up is Carlos Cabrera, and then Jennifer is last. Carlos, you want to go ahead and speak? Looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Hear me now?
Ah, there we go. Yes.
Sorry for that. Yeah, no, I was saying thank you everyone and Dr. Gallagher for the hard work on this. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions similar to what has already been mentioned, but it would be very helpful to know the metrics and the rationale for the decision of taking such a slow pace in reopening schools, given that other schools in our same county are taking a much faster approach. And then the second question is, since these things change week to week, how much flexibility is there for it to be a faster reopening of schools? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Carlos. And then last is Jennifer.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My question is, since we are doing a slow rollout and school isn't going to stay closed until December, what about the kindergartners? Are they going to be expected to do a full day like a third grader? I have two children that go to Bishop. One's a kindergartner and one's a third grader. Right now, he is doing Zoom from 8:30 to 10 o'clock, and I have a hard time trying to get him just to focus on being on the internet. My third grader, she's doing great. She's engaged. Her teacher's been wonderful so far these past weeks, and I've really appreciated all the hard work that he's done. And same with my kindergartner's teacher. She's been wonderful, but it is like trying to wrangle kittens and trying to keep him focused from 8:30 to 11:05 like her, and then have to go back on at 2:10. Are we still going to have that same expectation of them sitting and staying focused for all of that, or are we still going to keep the couple of hours of instruction for them? And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Then we just had two more people just now raise their hands.
So we're coming close to our 20 minutes. Let's maybe take these last two with 2 minutes each, and then we will end at that. And anyone else who has comments afterwards, as a reminder, you can always send comments to meetingcomments@sesd.org. So again, let's do these last two at 2 minutes each, and then people can send to meeting comments.
Thank you. Okay, Agnes, you're up first, and then Esfidi, you're up next. Agnes, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you should be able to talk.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes.
This is not Agnes, by the way, sorry. It's Agnes' daddy. My name is Robin. Hi, everyone. It's quick. I just want to show the appreciation, and I can see how much effort this year the teachers put into the curriculum and to facilitate the meetings. And I really appreciate all the schedule they put in and get the kids really engaged and feel like they are partial in the classroom. I really appreciate all the effort from the school district and all the teachers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Agnes's father. And then Esfidi, you are the last one. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Speedy. So I just want to say that I agree with Jennifer's comment about, I also have two students at Bishop, a kindergartner and a second grader, and about, the times for the kindergartner, I agree with her. If they're extended, that's really difficult. So I just wanted to agree with her.
Thank you so much. All right.
All right, thank you for those who shared, and thank you, Aaliyah, for helping us with that. I'm going to share the two questions that I kind of got from those, and then Board, if you had others, and then also just our own questions and our own discussion. So the two I would like to ask from staff is one, which I know we also got some letters about this as well, but that idea about kinder, and right now kinder is in their shorter, and a lot of families are worried about it going longer. So what's kind of the plan with that for their Zoom time? And then the other question around kind of, are there metrics or data that we're following or that will help us? I know one that can use the word trigger, the different phases. So I don't know who best to address, but I'll send those to staff.
I'll start with the metrics if I can. So the first metric from the state is moving from purple to red, and then being, I guess, firmly in red, allows us to provide in-person instruction as opposed to just simply the supports. So that's the first metric that's sort of imposed on us. I can tell you that in our county superintendents meetings, different superintendents have asked the county to provide some of the infection data by zip code in a more comprehensive way than is available currently. And the county is a little reluctant to do that because I think it's hard to collect. And can be misleading, I suppose, is what they said. The implication, however, is that the virus is more of a concern in certain areas of the county than others. And I can say that even in Sunnyvale, the one set of metrics that are on the county website indicates that the farther south you go in Sunnyvale, the less presence of the virus there is, and the more farther north you go, the more there is. So it's variable, right? So that's going to be a difficult one to use as a metric for our purposes. For our purposes, I think we're relying on staff and family readiness, and we need to realistically have a large proportion of both to be ready to return for us to return fully. When we talk about like what might be potentially as early as January, we have to have a large percentage, because if it's half and half, that's very complex to accommodate both. We need our teachers and we need our students. So we're really looking at the surveys that kind of that the board members were referencing earlier as a major indicator. Those, I would say, are the main metrics. The other data is what I walked through in the presentation. How are our safety protocols working? And we may, I suppose, if we get started and we start having suspected cases and potentially positive cases, that would be data that we would collect as well as looking at other school districts that are either moving on the same path that we're on or that are ahead of us. We could look at how they are doing, progressing through their stages to inform how we should move forward as well. So that's kind of the analysis. It's not a when we hit this mark, then we do this, because a lot of this has to do beyond just numbers with how people's sense of security and feeling of safety, which is very real. I hope that answers the question. Oh, and then kindergarten. Mala, do you feel comfortable answering that one? Okay.
Absolutely. As an ex-kindergarten teacher, I absolutely feel comfortable. So we all know the importance, of course, of students seeing their teacher, interacting with their peers. So there's no question about that. And we all want to find this ideal balance, if there is such a thing as ideal, between developmentally appropriate practices regarding screen time and also dealing with the importance of instruction, because we know how critical these early years are in terms of receiving instruction. We know, Sunnyvale is a hugely diverse city and not one size fits all. We absolutely get that. Working on considering what best practices are going to be for this virtual Zoom time. Bridget said about how the Zoom jockeys that our teachers are really handling this, and our kindergarten teachers are doing an amazing job, as are our others. So we're really dealing with two considerations, and it may not be a one size fits all. So there's one option of having shorter chunks of time, which live instruction, so the students are on, then they're doing something off, and then they're on, and then going off again. But if you think of some families for whom this may not work, or for the students, there's another option of being logged in, but not necessarily being with their mics and cameras on. So they're still logged in, so they don't have to keep logging in and out, because that poses another challenge as well. But we're definitely being mindful of keeping that balance of what's developmentally appropriate and not having, I don't think the fear of them having a schedule like the 5th graders is going to be appropriate, because that isn't developmentally appropriate for kindergarten. And we absolutely get that. So with some teacher conversations and input and talking to, a bargaining unit, we will come up with a plan that works for our teachers. Does that address your question, Michelle? Did you have a follow-up?
No, I think that's good. So I think just so they won't necessarily, there is the possibility of them not doing the going back. So I think there is a lot of concern about that first window of maybe 2 or 3 hours works, but then to try to get a kindergartner back on at 2 o'clock.
And those are the considerations we're going to definitely be looking at. A really healthy balance of live and asynchronous learning. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board, is there Do you have additional questions or comments, thoughts?
Yes. So I appreciate a phased roll-in, but I think you're overly optimistic about the projected actualization of your timeline. I know that 2 weeks is what they give, but that's also the rate of infection of the possible. 2 weeks is the outside window for exposure. So a 3 week, so when you're first gathering a group, giving them at least 3 weeks would allow for that maximum 2 weeks of time and allow for additional testing to happen and be able to reflect and refine practices before you bring in any more people into the dynamic. So that is the concern that I have. The other thing is how we haven't heard from the county yet how robust their tracking and testing is. And that is another metric that I think is very critical to reopening, is understanding how available are testing, what is the testing turnaround time, and then how is contact tracing going. To me, before we bring in large groups of kids, we need to make sure that that system is able to handle and absorb that. And those are factors outside of our locus of control, but we can exercise pressure on healthcare systems to be more robust in what they're offering adults and children to accommodate that. I know we're supposed to be testing staff on a regularly reoccurring basis, but I want to be able to understand and have capacity that if there's someone who might be symptomatic, that we can get all the kids tested and be assured that there isn't an outbreak within a pod before we bring on another group. And I think giving at least 3 weeks into that would be more realistic in a time frame. The other concern that I have, and that no one has mentioned, is that we're entering into flu season. This is another important metric because it is challenging, but not impossible, to differentiate between what symptoms are that of flu and what are symptoms possibly of COVID. And the metric that I would love to see added in is how many children and staff have been able to be immunized against the flu. If we know that they have, while a flu vaccine is based on best guesstimates for what the flu actually is, if we have more students who are coming back who have been immunized, then that does give more indications of what might be happening symptomatically within a classroom, and we can encourage families and staff to do that as well if they are choosing to participate in these kinds of earlier roll-in models. To me, that builds resiliency within our assessment, but also can build some individual resiliency within each student as well. So those are some of the metrics that have not been talked about that I think are important to have as considerations. The march forward in progression is not linear. We are going to have times where there are going to be surges. And so we need to be mindful about what's happening in the general community and community spread beyond just what our zip codes are. I agree that that's an indicator, but that may not be the best indicator of what's happening because it's system capacity. It's how well can our healthcare systems be able to respond to meeting those needs of people needing to be tested and evaluated, and then being able to quarantine, contact trace, and then safely return into a pod. So I also want to make sure that families know that even though we start pods, that doesn't mean that that pod is going, while we hope that there's not going to ever be any occurrence of COVID or any other communicable disease within that subgroup, we can't make that promise. And that there may be other illnesses aside from COVID that might preclude that group from continuing to meet, or from us extending our measured progression outward into more numbers of students. And my last point is that as you bring on more students onto campus, you also need to help educate the students about how it's going to look different when more students come, because their perceptions of time and their perceptions of space and the availability is going to be changing as more students come in on campus, that they will need to adjust to some of the behaviors that they've already learned, or perceptions that seem to be safe because nobody else was around. Well, that is not going to be the permanent reality. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Board, other questions or comments? Go ahead, Reed.
Go, Bridget, do you want to go? Okay, so Nancy, thanks for all of that deep thinking and insightfulness about the things that we need to pay attention to. And the flu shot's a really good point. I'm curious as to if other districts are I don't know if we can require it, or at least asking for it, or maybe say as a safety measure, it would be smart. And maybe, I mean, I was just at CVS today, or Walgreens, and they were offering flu shots. So hopefully it's easy for our teachers to get, and hopefully our students too. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of go through, I had done some informal polling of other school districts. I know a lot of people have mentioned districts that are going back. San Mateo is a little bit ahead of us in terms of having fewer cases. They've been ahead of us kind of a lot. They've been more open than we have been. I know a lot of people that go there to get their haircut have been going there to get their haircut. They are, you know, I haven't talked to them, but it sounds like they're a little bit further ahead of us in terms of their opening plan. But I did talk to a lot of board members across the county just to get a feel for where other districts are. And I just want to let you all know that we're all sort of in the same boat in terms of trying our best and trying to be safe and making a plan as best we can. So just to go through it, and I know a lot of you guys know this, but I'm sure not everybody does. So that's why I wanted to go through it. Cupertino is planning on staying distance learning, you know, at least through December. Fremont Union, as I think Paulie even mentioned this, they're gonna stay distance learning through at least December. Santa Clara, they have a lot of things to work on before they can consider bringing kids back. So they don't have any plan to bring kids back, although they do have some students coming in to do sort of some learning, not learning, but like do their computers with some people watching over them. So that's been a new thing. They have a cool name for it, I can't remember, but, and Palo Alto is doing the same thing. They're bringing some kids in, older kids, to do work on campus just because it's harder for them to focus and do the work at home. Palo Alto is actually wanting to go hybrid really soon. So they're gonna be one of the first test markets. Los Altos, I heard, is planning on going back hybrid relatively soon. Mountain View Wisman is up in the air, but I think they're hoping to go back hybrid relatively soon. Yeah, go ahead, Bridget. Yeah, if you know more, go ahead.
Because, you know, if we actually go red, like, so these people are planning on going hybrid through a waiver through these plans that they've made. And I mean, some of them, right? Like Los Altos, for example. But like, if we end up with the red thing, I thought that the teachers cannot be split between two different groups. Like the teachers, it would be like 14 or 16, whatever the number is. And they can't be shared between two groups of students. So I don't know how they're gonna make.
So I don't know what
details have changed
from
the county.
Yeah. I don't know what details have changed after you're in the red for 2 weeks. One person clarified for me, Mike, I'm not sure if you've heard this from Marianne, but once you're in the red for 14 days, then you're cleared to open following the guidelines, but that you can't really go back and forth. Like once you're open in the red, they're not going to say, oh, now we're purple, now you have to shut down schools. So that's just one bit of information that makes it, makes a little bit more sense as to why some people are considering going back hybrid. And you guys all know that today San Jose announced that they're not going to go back at all until January. And that's a huge district. I mean, that's a lot. So I'm looking at my notes to see if I missed anybody. I think Los Gatos, they actually, it was fun. I saw a friend today who has kids in Los Gatos, and she said they're doing a phased approach, and with phase one, and she kind of repeated exactly what you said, Mike. So, and it was fun to hear a parent talking about that. So I think that the phased approach makes a lot of sense. I'm sensitive to, what the survey is going to say about what our parents want. I know some parents are desperate to come back, but I also know a lot who are really not, they're afraid, and they don't want their kids to come back. And it sounds like, according to Wendy, and I'm sure she has a good pulse on it, our teachers are still not okay. So I think we just have to be sensitive to that. I mean, I do not want to be responsible for forcing somebody to be in a classroom or in a position where they are uncomfortable. I mean, some of these people don't even go to the grocery store. So anyway, those are my thoughts. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Reed. Bridget, did you have? Bridget, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry. I had a couple things. So one was about, this idea of reopening and the safety protocols. And I would just, the last time we spoke, I think that where we left it with Rob and with the district in general was, well, we were just going to meet the requirements of the county and public health, and that's it. And I think I had a conversation with Nancy today, and we were talking, and we started talking about like this idea of developing best practices instead of being minimalistic about it. And not that we are, but like just that's the tendency, like for like when you're going down a checklist, like what is required to reopen, like, well, we must do this. And then I know that there's always some leveraging, like, well, how much benefit does this or that get? But I feel like when I was listening to NPR or listening to articles or reading articles about these schools that are reopening, and most of them are private schools, and the things that they're doing are like, there's a nurse at every school. They're hiring more nurses so that there's a nurse at every school. There's different campus entrances and drop-off times, and they're building extra outdoor spaces, and they have like a luxury of a lot of money to throw at this, and hiring additional teachers because the pod size can't be more than 14. So they're just hiring more people. And I feel like, I guess I just want to, like, number one, I want to think about the protocols, like, one-way hallways and all this other assigned bathrooms, and like the logistics of it are enormous. And I know that we can deal with them, but I don't want to be like, well, we're not required to have separate drop-offs or start times. That's just a suggestion. So like, I want to really try to, if we're going to reopen, to do as many as we can as early as we can, so that becomes the habit and the standard, and we can see if they're working. But the other part of it is, like, I just have a question, like, I guess I've never really gotten the answer of like how much we can actually support with the way that it's written now, because it seems to me like from a math point of view that if you can only have 14 people in a pod and 1 or 2 of them are teachers, and a lot of times the teachers are doubled up in case one gets sick, so you have like, that's almost like half of what we normally have in a class. And so the teacher that would be coming back with the kids is not going to also be distance learning, like Zooming with this other half of the class. And so if it seems like if you say, yeah, everyone's going to get a turn to come back on campus, it seems like the only way we could do it is if we can do hybrid. And I thought that I heard from the state so far that hybrids are not the way to go. and then it's not even being allowed. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what is our actual capacity? Like, if we said we want to bring back all the TK and all the kindergartners back, like, are we looking at additional staffing? Like, are we going to be using other people's classrooms because they can't share space? Like, what is the thought on that?
So Bridget, that's the planning that we would have to do, right? So it isn't all the way thought out. You know, you're causing me to think back to July with the concept of hybrid. So I'm trying to remember. I remember, my memory is that the feeling was that whole classes, this isn't mine, this is what other people told me, that whole classes would be safer than, like you're suggesting, 2 groups, right? Because that's 2 groups mixing, and then the group that isn't there is off at childcare the next, you know, the opposite day, and then that's more dangerous.
Right, right.
That was my understanding too. But I believe, and we'll go back when we get closer, I believe that it was determined that that was allowed. I heard that, so the question was asked in our county superintendent's meeting on Tuesday, how many cohorts can a child be in, right? So, and the answer was 2. I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but that was the answer from the county health department. So 1 outside group and school. So that suggests that maybe hybrid is okay, at least legal. Now, whether we think it's wise or not, that's another question.
But the teacher, but I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that the way that like the red restriction is, it seemed like they were saying that the teachers can't move between, the same teacher can't be with 2 groups in person. So I'm just wondering, like, capacity wise, if we had the kids back, like, are you thinking, I mean, could we, without a hybrid, we really can't have everybody back, right?
We're just not there yet. Maybe we could. We're not at the point where we've explored that in depth, like what a model would be.
Okay, well, I'm gonna also say that I really hope that we would have at least 3 weeks in between. And I like the idea of TK first, because TK is already at different campuses and it's small. But
I can tell you, I know we talked about that, Bridget, and that may be how we end up. The argument for kinder first, and maybe we end up, it's much later than we're talking and it's all of them, I don't know. But the argument for kinder first is that TK is a 2-year program. So maybe it makes sense to get the kindergartners there before the TKers. You know, logistics will kind of guide that when we get closer, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things I just wanted to say that I forgot to jump in on is that because we're being conservative, and a lot of other districts are, but there are some that aren't being as conservative as we are. And we're going to be able to look and see how it's working for them. And we're in touch with them. You know, we talk to these people every week. So we're going to know how it's working within the other school districts so that we can help develop some of those best practices. And Bridget, I thought that was awesome what you said about you guys talking about how to make it better. And I think when we see how these other districts are doing, we'll get some other ideas about that.
So the other issue that wasn't completely addressed, but I wanted to acknowledge, is that some of our families are really struggling, and it's having not only a social emotional impact, but a financial impact as well. And so I know that in our newsletter this time, we talked about a new website that the County Office of Education is putting up, where it's resources for childcare for all families, And so there are more programs that are opening up, and so that might be an additional resource for supervision of your children while they are in a virtual learning modality that I would invite people to explore of what's available currently. And then if we're seeing more of a need, then that's something that we can talk collaboratively with childcare providers and other partners to see if we can create more podding outside of our school physical buildings, but there might be pods that could be placed in different places to try and address needs for those families who are truly struggling and that we're not yet able to accommodate in a pod phase in that we're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Nancy. And I can tell you every time we've asked the city for help, they've said yes. So I don't know what their capacity is, but we can continue to explore that. They're really eager to be partners on all of this with us.
So maybe that's a question that we could be asking in this, somehow asking of availability of supervision outside of what the school district may be able to provide. Are you interested, would that meet a need? Or what is your need for that, for those who are struggling financially to be able to try and do this, because that's that certainly impacts student learning of household stress and trying to meet those needs. So I did want the public to know that I heard what they have to say. I'm compassionate in trying to offer additional opportunities and explore more ways that we can try and meet those needs.
Nancy, I think a tricky part with that though is there are resources out there, but the families that are struggling financially are not going to be able to afford those resources, right? So that's the tricky part, is those who have financial resources can reach out and use those community services, but those who rely on free public education don't have the resources to use those.
So I appreciate that. The resource referral is for all members of the community, and there are some subsidized programs. And so I can't speak to anyone's individual income eligibility, but I want to have them reach out. And I've served on the LPC, which is the Local Planning Council, and we collect data from those people who are doing the resource information referral. And if we're finding that there's a need for people who aren't qualifying for, or who do not qualify for the subsidized care, even with income sliding scale, and yet can't accommodate the fees for what other private daycares are doing, then that creates an opportunity and creates partnerships. But if we don't know about it, then we can't create something.
If there are subsidized resources, that would be fantastic to be able to get that out to our families. Jeff?
Correct.
I had one more quick question. So on your timeline.
Let's see if Jeff hasn't had a chance yet to speak. So let's go, Jeff, and then we'll go back to you, Bridget.
No, go ahead, let Bridget go first, that's fine.
Okay, I just had a question because on the timeline it said like December 30th, and like we're out for winter recess then. So you mean like after the break, right? You're not going to bring kids back in when people are not there.
That is a typo. I think I meant November 30th, but I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think, remember we were talking about like the 3 weeks between Thanksgiving. So I'm going to correct that now. Thank you. And it's ambitious anyway, so.
So actually Nancy reminded me of this too. I actually heard, I don't know how valid it is, but I actually heard some kind of news report about there being flu vaccination shortages for just the common flu. And because I remember at the time when I heard the report, I'm like, why, of course, why wouldn't we just put ourselves in that position? But I think all the attention has been going into the research of this vaccine that has caused some shortages. And if that's true, then maybe it'd be worthwhile for us to put an announcement to our families to, get vaccinated early. especially if we start talking about coming back in. Now, I'm going to push against the 2 weeks is too ambitious a little bit. Just putting some thoughts out there. I'm just, I understand the concern. We introduce new pods into the group and we have to kind of make sure there's no contagion there. But once we start bringing kids in, the contagion is going to be a 24/7 concern. I mean, they go back home for a lot of uncertain conditions. They come back the next day and it's about containment. So 2 weeks, not so much worried about contagion of a new pod, but more of analysis of the procedures and practices and protocols, right? And I think 2 weeks, I mean, maybe it's too little time, or maybe it's enough, but it's more about that concern about how are the practices and protocols doing on campus, and can we add more to that? So, I mean, this is coming from someone who's working among kind of like students in a vacuum, right? I mean, and yet still concerns pop up. And it's not because of the kids, it's because of the people that go home and then come back to the kids every day. So it's about how are you trying to mitigate those risks? And then once the risks do pop up and the concerns pop up, how are you going to deal with those little pockets of flare-ups and concerns, quarantining and sending them home, those kind of procedures. I'm trying to be an optimist here, and I'm thinking that 2 weeks could be enough to have those kind of analysis. If we're aware and we're frequently practicing, because another risk is once you start returning pods of students back to an environment that's normal, then we start getting kind of sloppy with our practices, and we have to be aware and constantly self-analyzing and constantly reminding. I mean, I find myself still, when a student's asking for help, I find myself drawing in closer, because that's sort of the reaction of teachers: get over there and deal with them. And then you have to remind yourself you have to stay, distant. But the other thing is, I might have missed this, but I know we have a good partnership with CHAC. Are they holding any kind of group, virtual group sessions, or any kind of opportunities to reach out to students that maybe need the social emotional component? Or
yeah, you want me to take that, Mike? Yeah, we're providing actually within the district services, but some of our families have expressed, as a matter of fact, got a couple of inputs today, who are looking for some more adult individual type counseling. So we're gonna assess what the needs are and kind of direct to the appropriate agency, but CHAC is one of those, and they are providing some services. But we do have a handful of parents that we've identified who might need something else. And so you saw in the transition plan, the phase plan that Dr. Gallagher talked about. And so some of that 101 is some of that, where we are now getting a sense of what some of those needs are for families, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. Like some services might be delivered in a park, for example. So we're just trying to address these as they're coming up and target it in the most appropriate way. But yes, we are working with CHAC as well as a few other agencies.
Thank you. It's a lot of information coming at us constantly, so I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.
Jeremy, I think you wanted to respond to something.
Yeah, just real quick, I apologize, Michelle. It's been mentioned a couple of times now, the flu. Just wanted to let the board know, and the community that's listening, is that, yeah, we are putting together, HR is working with benefits and Aaliyah to put together a staff message and a community message. So the community message will have just, general information about the importance of the flu shot, and then community resources. And then we are working with United Healthcare and Kaiser for vaccination information on the flu shot, as well as contacting our school's insurance group about trying to arrange on-site flu shots for staff. So we're already on that to try to put that out, and I will work faster now, Jeff, especially because you now created a shortage, so we will work faster.
That's all we need.
We can hope what Jeff heard is not true. And thank you, Jeremy.
Wouldn't be the first time. I'm sorry I put that out there, but if it is true, then yay me.
I just wanted to share my thoughts on, with the how many weeks in between. For me, I think a little bit depends on what we're referring to, right? So when months in the future, when we're doing the everyone's coming back and we're maybe doing it by grade levels, it would probably make more sense for that to go a little bit slower, because that is a very large number of students and that's a bigger thing, right? So that one I would kind of see the need to maybe go slower on. But for what we're hoping to start in the next few weeks with, what are we calling them? Support hubs? Is that the name? That's the right name for us. Okay. Support pods. Okay.
It's a working title. I'm open to others.
But whatever the groups are that we're going to start bringing back, that I feel like, because it's not big groups of kids, and it's like the first phase is 4 schools and then the next phase is the other schools. So it's not even bringing more kids onto the same campus. So for those, I don't think we need the 3 weeks. And kind of from what I've been saying from kind of the beginning is we have, which we've often talked about this tug and pull of, there are safety concerns on both sides, right? There's the obvious safety concern of bringing people in and COVID-19, which is very real. But then there is the safety concerns, mental, physical health for all of our students, but there are small numbers of students where the sooner we can get them onto campus into a safe place, the better I feel it is for those students. So I would encourage the 2 weeks, unless if something were to happen, right? Of course we need to slow down if things change. But if things continue to progress well in the county, and if we can do that and we're seeing it be successful, I would encourage that to continue to go as quickly as possible, of course, following all of the safety protocols and guidelines that we know are best practices. I feel like there was something else. So I'm like going through all the different notes that I've made. This is going back to a long time ago in the meeting. I don't remember when, but it's a note that I made that I think it was Mike who was talking about sustainability. It might have been someone else, but that's something that I have been thinking about, I mean, for a while, but especially kind of last week and through this week is, first it was thinking about sustainability for teachers, right? That idea that so many teachers are working 12-hour days and that's not sustainable. And I think it was Mike who said, reminder that this is a marathon, right? We need to figure out ways to, right, make this more sustainable. But then as I've been thinking about it more, there's the sustainability for teachers, right? That it needs to be something that works, that people are not going to get burnt out. But then also for families, right? That it needs to be sustainable families, right? And if, right, we heard earlier tonight, right? Someone spoke about the idea that they're working 12 hours a day, right? Because they have their day job, but then also during that same day job, they're doing helping their children. So I don't have answers, but that's just what's been on my mind, right? Is that this idea of sustainability, and I don't know the right word. I don't want to say lower expectations because that's not what I want, but I think we need to, maybe what Mike said is great, is that idea of space and grace, right? Knowing that this is going to look different and not ideal for a long time. And that we need to figure out as a community, right? This whole community, all the different stakeholders, how we can make this more sustainable for everybody. So I don't have answers about that, but that's kind of what has been in my head. And if I had answers, then I would share them.
Well, Michelle, also like what you were saying with the 2 weeks versus 4 weeks, and what you're saying now, like I sort of feel like, we won't know what the issues are until we start, right? Once we start, then all of a sudden we're going to be faced with so I mean, we might think that it's going to be really hard and it's super easy, or vice versa, you know. So we'll see how well the kids keep the masks on, and you know, we're able to do that stuff. So
yeah, great reminder about the flexibility piece. Okay, board, is there any other questions or comments about this?
So what are the next steps? Like, who is going to be working on this, and like, what's the, I know some people are doing the support pod piece, but like, as far as like, once we really start talking about bringing grade levels in, what's the plan?
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. We work on that in cabinet every week. So now we kind of have a source document to work from. And like I said, I imagine us like moving through it and adjusting the dates. So we kind of came up on Monday with like, what are the dates that are all in our heads? And so that's how we placed them on this. And they already moved a little bit. And so I imagine next Monday, they'll move some more and we'll get updates. So like right now we're really focusing on those. Well, Jeremy's really focusing on working with the city for the homeless, the kids from the homeless shelter. And so that's like job one. But then meanwhile, we're also working really hard on those first 4 support pods with the principals. So we'll be getting updates on Monday, see what our timeline looks like, adjust the timeline as necessary. And then we can do check-ins with, well, of course we will do check-ins with you as we move through. So yeah, what we're kind of doing is assigning like a lead for each little project or big project, and then the whole team supports.
I just, as Bridget asked that question as you were talking, Mike, I just had a thought. I don't know if this is how we want to do it, so I'll just throw it out. This idea, what if we maybe kind of moving forward, so like we have a meeting in about 2 weeks, right, is our next meeting, right? So what if at that next meeting, so essentially like once a month, it will be kind of short updates on our progression and what's going on. And then the following one, so then essentially, so we'll say like, so the first meeting of the month will be short updates. And then the second meeting of the month will be maybe a little bit more like this, where it's a little bit more, because I think every 2 weeks, we're not going to have lots of new answers, but we'll have some. But I think every month we'll have enough where maybe it is a longer discussion of, okay, here's maybe our adjusted timeline, here's the new progress. I don't know if that timing seems good with staff and board, that kind of outline moving forward with it, or if we want to do something different.
Well, on October 1st, for example, we can give you an update on the kids from the homeless shelter and on the support pods in the first set. Like, have we started? Have we not? Like, how close are we? That's exactly where we'll be in 2 weeks. And then what the next step is.
Michelle, I was going to say, rather than making it formulaic, like this is a short one, this is a long one, let's just see the updates that we have, and under COVID updates, just give whatever updates are relevant for that week, that meeting, because some of them might be a lot and some of them might be a little.
All right, board, does that sound good? Okay. Staff, do you need anything else from us, or I think you've got the questions and our concerns and thoughts? Okay, thank you, everyone. I almost feel bad repeating the thank you, right? Hopefully you know that we really do appreciate all that you guys are doing, and then also all of the staff in our district, right? Everyone is playing a part in this, and we appreciate everybody so much. Okay, let's maybe do a 5-minute break right now. So we'll come back at 9:10. And when we come back, we will be on 8B, the discussion on the board office hours. So see you after our short recess.
Yeah, to our interpreters, if you could sit tight, that'd be great. And we'll see you in 5 minutes. Thank you.
So the next item is, excuse me, is 8B. So we're on the discussion on board office hours. This is an opportunity for the board to discuss establishing board office hours. board office hours is an opportunity for board members to sit down with the community to discuss issues related to education in our district. So before we start our discussion, I will open it up to public comment on this item. So if there's anyone who wishes to speak to this item, please use the raise hand feature now. We'll wait just a moment. All right, I'm not seeing anyone. Aaliyah, you don't see any raised hands either, right?
No, I do not.
Okay. I was hoping Dr. Gallagher during that time would have come back on. Oh, perfect timing. You're on mute, so I can't hear you.
I've been here the whole time. I didn't realize my camera wasn't on.
Oh,
Sorry.
no worries, no worries.
Yeah.
I will now turn the time over to Dr. Gallagher and Nancy to lead us through this discussion.
Okay, I guess I'll just start and then Nancy can take over. We basically have come up with found two models, and we included in the board packet the one from Fremont High School District. I also included, as you noted in the packet review questions, a link to the Saratoga Elementary School District process. The difference, as I see it, is that one includes staff and one doesn't. My bias is towards including the staff. I'll be honest with you, I could go either way. The reason that I'm like leaning that way is because I think many community members who would come to such a meeting wouldn't necessarily know the difference between the role of the board and the role of staff. And so it might just be more efficient to do it that way. So like I said, I'm open to either. What we would want to do is set up a schedule. My understanding from talking to the superintendents in both of those districts is that these would be, as you might expect, more popular like during COVID times, but during normal times, they're not that popular, but it's a good opportunity for community members to meet with a board member, meet with a superintendent or staff member in a less formal setting than in front of a whole group of people. So even if it's sparsely used, it has value. So that's kind of an introduction. I don't, Nancy, do you want to jump in from here?
So board, we've been talking about outreach to the community and building relationships for a while. We didn't get a chance to finish that at our last board development, so I did some research and looked at Fremont, our cohort, and looked at some other models. I think the big thing for me is sustainability. I appreciate the formality of the Fremont in articulating what our roles and responsibilities are, but at the end of the day, it's all about sustainability and what do we as a board have a commitment to do. Because I would like it to be accessible to all board members, whether they choose to or not. At least in the Zoom modality, there's more of an opportunity to schedule things at hours of the day that may accommodate different touch points. I noted that with Fremont, they, with intentionality, go around to the schools as a point of entry to that, to be more accessible. I'm not sure how that would look like in reality, because we have more schools than they do. They committed to making 6 meetings a year. I don't think that we have the bandwidth to do any more than maybe 4. Because of the need this year, at least, for additional meetings and additional opportunities, and I think I would be, or what would be important to me is that 2 people be there. If 2 board members could not be there, I would certainly think it's appropriate for a staff and a board member to be there, especially for new board members who may not have a full, more complete knowledge of the school district and its workings, because we're also looking about making a transition in November with Reed retiring and Isabel coming on board. But having experience with 2x2s with this city and having their city staffers there, it changes the dynamic. And part of this is to be accessible to the public, and some things that they would, and building one-on-one relationships. Is important, and having that freedom to begin a dialogue that would invite conversations that could include more staff and other is something that we could do. I wouldn't want to have every meeting have staff be present, but that's my particular, that comes from my experience of seeing people shut down from this, not from our district, but looking at how people shut down when staff are present in a more public type of meeting. So with that, I'm open to drafting a modified protocol of what Fremont had, and then bringing it back for consideration. What are your thoughts, board? Hello, thoughts? Anybody have any thoughts? Bridget.
So I was thinking, well, I'm open to anything. I think having office hours is better than not having office hours. So I think it'd be good to start somewhere. I was envisioning like it being a monthly meeting, and because only 2 people can go, maybe, you know, I would probably only go to a couple, or, you know, like we could split it up over the year. We have, you know, we have 5 people, and we could make it accessible to everyone. So I was hoping it would just be like a regular, like monthly time or something. And my question was like, would there be a possibility, so like with an IEP meeting or something, where someone could request a translator, or would we just have a translator available? Like, could we figure out some ways so that it would be accessible to the district, so that if somebody, you know, spoke a language other than English, that they could come and talk to us? And not that it would just be available every time, but just that it would be an option, because we wouldn't know. I don't know. That was just something I was thinking about, to try to make it truly accessible. And
Bridget,
then I was also,
Bridget, Bridget,
yeah.
I was just going to jump in. I think Isabel speaks Spanish, right? So maybe what we can do is when she has a turn, she can sort of promote the fact that she speaks Spanish, and she could be the translator.
But I would like it to be accessible to everybody every time. So like with an IEP meeting, there might be someone who speaks even, you know, another language that, you know, you can request that someone, I mean, it doesn't, maybe like if we could get 24, I don't know how it works, but I mean, I really, I'm really interested in making it truly available to everybody. And
okay,
I cannot learn Spanish fast enough, but there are other languages spoken. So I just like wanted to put that out there.
So
I think that's a good, just general question, right? Is what can we do to make it accessible, right? Because there's other things too, right? So you know, trying to come up with ways that someone ahead of time could tell us, right? But there's probably other ways too, right? So I think that's a really good question of how do we make it, if we're going to do this and we really want it for the community, how do we make it accessible? I think that's a good question.
Right.
And one way is
times or
yeah.
Yes, Reed?
That's what I was going to say. Just to make the one thing I would say is to offer it at different times. You know, sometimes in the evening, sometimes in the day. So I'm not speaking because I think it's a great idea. I think it's awesome that you guys are doing this, and I'm out.
You're starting soon.
Start in January.
So what about the idea if we maybe did, because I like both models, right? I think there is some really good value from both of the models, right? Of making it a more informal with just board members and it's still casual, but a more formal with staff, kind of the way Fremont does. So I don't know if this is making it too tricky, but what if we did, so it is like once a month, there are these board office hours, right? And 1 month it is with staff, and then the next month it's not, and then it's with staff, and then it's not. So I don't know if that's too complicated, but then it kind of allows both ways for maybe different community members who might want different things. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
And then maybe you're just trying both and you're seeing which works better too.
Yeah, that could be.
I'd like to try different locations outside of schools too. Maybe a little more approachable to some community members. School can be sometimes, I mean, that campus can sometimes be the intimidating factor as well.
Well, if we have a Zoom meeting, then that means they meet us wherever we are. When we go to, but I hear what you're saying. At the city, when city council members have office hours, they're usually in community spaces away from community-owned properties.
One of the beautiful things about Zoom is it's so accessible. And I think even when COVID is over, we're still going to be using it at some point. So it might be something that you guys want to consider doing on Zoom, you know, for a while. And if it works great, sticking with it. Because I have a feeling you're going to get a much better turnout with people talking to you from their own homes than needing to drive somewhere to have the conversation. So.
Yeah, I was expecting actually that through the end of the year it would be on Zoom, because just logistically to get more people to participate, and you know what's going on with the COVID community.
Well, I would say let's be consistent and do Zoom throughout this school year, and then reevaluate it in the fall, because in the fall it may be more realistic to gather at school sites. If we're still limiting who comes on campus, I don't want to be an add-on into campus until there's more accessibility from the public in general to come on to a campus. And to Jeff's point, would a Zoom meeting meet your needs of being more open and accessible for meeting this next school year, Jeff?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, Zoom is pretty open and accessible. I'm not sure what you mean. I was just thinking more of the long term, because I'd like to start thinking, you know, beyond COVID, because that just sounds really nice to me.
No, I agree. And I think certainly when we move to the on-site, having an administrator on, you know, when you're on a school campus also makes a lot of sense too. So,
So wait, you mean someone from the school site would be there, or someone from the DO would be there? Like, what are you thinking about that, Mike? Like if we hosted, like if you're saying we go to the, let's say we're at Fairwood, then Miss Romander would be there. Is that what you're thinking? Or are you thinking someone from the district office, like one of the superintendents, or you don't know?
Is that for me or for Nancy?
So that's for you. She asked you, Mike.
Oh, I wasn't necessarily thinking of school sites. I don't know. Again, I would just try different things. Like my kind of thought is like going along with Jeff's point of view, like let's think beyond COVID, like maybe it's on Murphy Street, right? Out in front of Bean Scene. Jeremy recommended Bean Scene. I'm more Coffee and More, like we're kind of competing that way. But you know what I mean? Like it's
more informal.
Less formal, right? It could be at Washington Park.
At the library. At our new library in a few years.
Yeah. So just try different things and see what sticks, but make it less formal. That's what I'm hearing, and I think I agree, because that makes it more accessible in a way too.
Mm-hmm. And we could explore the option that many people have is if you need an accommodation, you need to provide.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Within a usually a 72-hour notice, I think.
Yep.
So.
Yay, so when's our first one?
So I have a concern about 2 board members going, especially if we're swapping out what 2 board members, right? So like if I go do one with Nancy and then a few months later I do one with Bridget. I know that some, like the Saratoga, I think it was the Saratoga one that we looked at, where it has them and they're mixed up, right? It's not the same 2 board members. So I just have a very big Brown Act concern with that. Because then either board members can't share their opinions in those. So then I also piece of me is like, how helpful is it if we can't share our thoughts, or we share our thoughts, but then now, like if I've shared my opinion about something in a meeting with Bridget, then I can't talk about it. I don't know. So I have concerns about that. And I kind of want to run that past like maybe Greg, who kind of knows Brown Act. I don't know. That's just a concern. I want to do these, but I'm worried about having 2 board members present.
We can look at it we can look into it through legal, but I mean, the other thing around that is just if we map it out for 1 meeting a month throughout the year, and we can try to keep the same pairs, or we can start switching up. We have 1 board member, 1 staff member. That way we avoid the overlap. That's kind of a workaround. I mean, and we don't, I mean, obviously with a staff member, we don't have to worry about repeating, right? Or, yeah.
And what we can do is, like, Nancy and I could draft up something based on the input we're getting here, and then we could run it by DWK and just make sure everything's kosher. I mean, I think Jeff, your idea makes sense too, because it's not like we're doing these a couple times a week or something. But we'll just make sure, and then we'll bring it back.
Well, then, and then the other thing is, I guess part of it is the intention, the intentionality. I feel like I'm giving information and I'm listening and I'm guiding, but I'm not necessarily rendering my personal opinion, because to your point, I don't know when something may come up before the board, but if the board has taken a position on it, I can certainly share, and I should be supportive of the position that the board has taken on an item. So I appreciate the nuance, and I don't mind DWK looking at that, but talking about our intentionality and purpose and making sure we're aligned with that is more important to me. With that,
and it could be 1 or 2 board members, right? I mean, if we got into it, it doesn't have to be there. It's not like there has to be 2 by 2. I do like flexibility, though. I like being able to talk to people about different things.
I was going to say, I really appreciate Michelle bringing that up, because I see her point, and I hear what Nancy's saying as well, but my experience has been in informal settings with informal conversations. We'll start expanding a little bit more than that. That would get into dangerous ground.
Well, that's
fine. We just have to be cautious of I mean, we're only human and we have opinions. We should be able to express it. I do like your reminder as well, Nancy, about, you know, being supportive of decisions going forward. But when new issues come up or surprise issues come up, we're going to want to express ourselves. So.
But part of that is also the reason why I don't necessarily want to have one board member present. Then that's individual kinds of things, and there's not the accountability factor. So the one thing that I want to know is, and so we have these meetings, and how are we going to address whatever information comes?
Well, I saw there was another board where they had individual people had. I went on some website where when I was looking up, you know, comparing reopening plans, and individual board members had their office hours on there. Like they said, this is when I'm having office hours, and then they reported back to the board what people told them there. I mean, that's different than going off and having conversations. That's people, the public coming in and talking. So I think I understand that you're trying to be intentional about doing 2x2s, but I'm not tied to that. I could do either.
Well, it's just a matter of let's start with the 2x2s and see about access and sustainability. So.
Yep. So Nancy, do you think you have enough to work together to draft something, and we'll bring it back next meeting? Well, maybe not next meeting, but soon.
But are you hearing, I think Michelle and Jeff and I are maybe saying maybe not 2x2s. Maybe one of the twos would be a staff member.
Well, I mean, right, if we go with, you know, running it past legal and seeing, right, and just, I'm not saying we can't do it, I just have worries about it, right? We just need to be careful with it. So yeah, so if we run it past legal and we have protocols, you know, and we.
Yeah, because what they could do is they could put in, like, kind of like Fremont and Saratoga did in theirs, they can put in the protocols and the things we need to remember. And maybe that's even a piece of paper that every board member gets, like, remember, here's the, you know, Brown Act traps that be careful not to fall into. Like that's what DWK will help us with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even sharing that with the public that, you know, comes to these, so that they have appropriate expectations as well.
Yeah, just so you know, we're here to listen, because there's another board member here, like it may be the case for share.
In which case, if it comes to that, I would really, in the spirit of what I think we're trying to do here, I think we should probably revert back to just to be as informal as possible and have these open conversations, and maybe stagger it to a place that allows us to do that. As soon as we start drawing lines and rules on this office hours, then it starts becoming more of a formalized process, right?
Yeah, then it's not just having coffee at the bean scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Coffee is like, before you speak to me, let me tell you the rules before you can.
It's tricky.
Well, like we know people in the community, so we reach out to people who, like, when we want to ask them, like, hey, how's distance learning going? And, you know, or virtual school or independent study or whatever, we can reach out to people. But I mean, I just think, or like when people, you know, sometimes speak about things, like, I'll just follow up. But I feel like this would just be a way for people to, like, get that, feel like we're accessible, you know? I mean, people might just want to, you know, I mean, sometimes people do grab you in the grocery store and kind of tell you stuff. But I mean, this is different. So I think it's just about being accessible. That's what I want from it. I want people who I don't personally know to be able to have I want to be able to have a conversation with them if they want to talk to me. That's what I want. So I don't need to, it could be a board development meeting, it could be something else, but what I want out of it is I want that accessibility to and from the community. I want that connection.
So the one thing that I will say that was very apparent in the Fremont protocol was to let people know that their conversations may not be confidential. So that's the one part of it that I think is of importance that we need to clarify with DWK. But that would be the one that would be the one thing that I would want to make sure if in fact that that is an obligation that we do let people know about that ahead of time.
Would it be possible, you know, because if we have to wait till you guys bring it back and it might be a little while, could we schedule?
Yeah, you can go.
One of the ones, like, could we maybe schedule one, not necessarily now, but like that will happen, you know, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And maybe for that first one, we have staff and, you know, 2 board members just for that first one, right? So we can get it going. So we have at least one in the next month. And then sometime in one of the October meetings, Mike and Nancy will bring back, you know, the kind of, you know, the, I don't know, the protocols or the outline of it, and it will have been ran past legal, and we can kind of finalize moving forward. But I just would love to get one on the books before all of that happens. I think most of you would agree with that too. Can we do that?
So let's look at calendars and see what would be a possible.
Well, I don't know if all of us have to look at calendar.
Yeah, first you just have to decide who the first 2 who are going to be.
Yeah. Nancy and
Whatever
Bridget, do you guys want to do the first one?
Bridget, you're on mute.
Sure. I mean, sure.
Okay, let's have Nancy and Bridget do the first one, and then Jesus will coordinate your calendars with mine, and we'll get it on the books.
And we have a lot more going on tonight. So let's get it on the books and move on because we have a couple of other big things.
And then Nancy and I will work on the protocol with DWK, and we'll get it going.
All right.
Good job.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Mike. Okay, I gotta get back to the agenda. All right, we are now on to item 8C-A, tricky there, the COVID-19 updates and food service. Dr. Gallagher.
So thank you. So actually this is a 3-person effort, and I'm not one of the 3 people. So Jeremy, I think you, Aaliyah, and Lori, I don't know who's going first, but we're going to have a food services report.
Hi, good evening. I'm up first tonight. Just a quick overview of service and where we've been and where we're going. Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you. So we're offering food service at 6 of our 10 schools. Service time is from 10:30 to 1:30 at Bishop, Ellis, Columbia, Lakewood, and San Miguel. Vargas has a service window of 10:30 to 2. All of our meals follow the USDA guidelines for calories, saturated fats, trans fats, sugar, and sodium, as well as the USDA guidelines for serving size for fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. All of our food service staff is Serve Safe certified, and we provide them with masks, gloves, face shields, and all of the food service serving stations are outfitted with sneeze guards, and there's social distancing markers on the sidewalk. Next. So this is just a bird's eye view of our service since the pandemic hit. So the first part of the closure from March to June, we served about 82,000 meal bundles. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner bundles. So it's a little shy of 1,100 meals per day. And at that time, we were serving at the 4 Title I schools and Columbia. July 1st through August 14th, we served 31,000 meal bundles and just shy of 1,000 meal bundles per day and across the same 5 sites.
I'm sorry, so the second number is how many meals per day?
968.
On each one, okay.
Bundles, not meals.
Yeah, breakfast, lunch, dinner bundles. Actually, excuse me, starting July 1st, we could no longer serve dinner because the USDA changed the rules when we were not allowed to give out dinner as part of the meal bundles. So those were just breakfast, lunch, snack bundles. Starting on August 19th, which is the first day of school, we reverted back to the National School Lunch Program and our meal distribution program plummeted, and we only did, in a 2-week period, 1,800 meal bundles, which is approximately 138 meal bundles per day, and we were serving meals at all 10 sites. So most recently, the USDA changed the guidelines again, and we were able to have the opportunity to go back to the seamless summer feeding options. So we are giving out breakfast, lunch, and dinner bundles. So in a 1-week period, we went to 600 meal bundles per day, and we're serving at the 6 sites that I mentioned earlier.
Excellent. I'm the next part to talk about what we're terming the Second Harvest, I guess, grocery program. A little bit of context. This was a carryover from last year's. It used to be run by Sunnyvale Community Services with bulk groceries, and we've actually had a couple of reports on that. But fortunately, through the partnership with Sunnyvale Community Services, we were able to bring in a more, I guess, formal program with Second Harvest that started in June. What that looks like is grocery delivery roughly every other week, or I guess it's twice a month at our 4 Title I sites. And each family gets a large box of produce, a dairy box, which has eggs, cheese, and milk type products, a large dry goods box, and then meat, frozen meat, usually chicken. So these are large, large bulk groceries. I want to say 50+ pounds. And it's pretty impressive to watch the distribution happen. So I think Bridget is aware of this. The logistics of the program is difficult if the grocery, especially the dry goods, are not packed. So luckily we were able to leverage the partnership with Second Harvest because they were utilizing actually at the time National Guard, and actually they have volunteers now that are able to pre-pack the groceries and deliver. That way our staff could focus on checking eligibility and then distributing. So these are the numbers of the programs on average since June. We've been running this June, July, and August, so we're in our 4th month. And you can see it averages roughly 150 per site, and that was kind of the minimum that Second Harvest needed to distribute in order to be able to, I guess, enough bulk to coordinate the delivery out. Our timeline, we had initially set this up kind of in a hurry, so again, a huge shout out to Hiroko at Sunnyvale Community Services for really taking on the coordination between ourselves as well as Second Harvest. Lori is well aware of when the food program gets involved, there's a lot of federal forms and a lot of federal guidelines. So we really needed Sunnyvale Community Services expertise to help us navigate that, as well as making sure that we were working in conjunction with our food program with Lori and not in opposition. We had originally scheduled this to come through September just because we were unclear if Second Harvest was going to be able to maintain the packing. And luckily we have had confirmation. So we are pleased to report tonight that this program will continue every other week grocery delivery at these 4 sites into December, up until December, which we can at least see how that goes. Lastly, I know there was a question about eligibility. When this program started up, the outreach liaisons and the school sites utilized everybody that was taking advantage of the Sunnyvale Community Services program as a starting point. And then just kind of built from there. Eligibility for this program is a self-certification of income, and then we track and report weekly on back to Second Harvest, and then monthly to Sunnyvale Community Services. And we were tracking that data and making sure that I guess the word is getting out, because we do have families that take part from other sites other than these 4 that are able to partake in the grocery distribution. So that's the Second Harvest food bank report. Okay.
Thank you, Jeremy. And then in terms of outreach and promotion efforts, just making sure that our families are aware, and then following up and making sure that our families who need it the most are getting it. So I actually put together just a chart for all 10 of our school sites, and I included it in the board packet. You might have seen it. Just asking all of our school sites, how are they promoting food services and groceries? just in addition to what we've been doing at the district level. And it was a great opportunity to just connect and see what each side is doing and kind of talk about just district-wide best practices, and if, you know, get ideas from each other. Oh, I haven't tried that, let me try that. But found that schools are doing an amazing job just getting the word out every way they can in their school newsletters, actual blast phone calls, texts, and emails. They're pushing it out on Class Dojo and Seesaw. They have it on their websites, social media. I've seen often just the pictures of those big grocery boxes put together saying, come and get them. Teacher bulletins, teachers have been promoting it directly. And then at actual parent meetings as well, like ELAC and our parent-teacher associations and back-to-school nights. So they're really doing everything we can to just make sure the awareness is out there, and hoping to ramp that up going forward. And I didn't know if Jeremy wanted to start with next steps.
Yes. So the first next step, even referring back to the board meeting 2 weeks ago regarding the concern about lunch. That's been a constant discussion that we've been having. Just to let everyone know that we've been having some great discussions with the site principals to make sure, the middle school principals, to make sure that this factor is considered as we kind of take a look at the middle school schedule as a whole. Mala, Mala, that was this morning, right? Okay, so we had a great, Mala coordinated a great meeting this morning. It seemed like a few days ago, but we're definitely making progress on that component to take that into consideration, as well as other, as we evaluate the middle school schedule, but definitely that longer lunch period to make sure that food is there. In addition, with the shelter program being housed at Columbia Middle School as well, Lori's been a great help in making sure that the students are fed direct. So that's all kind of in one pot there.
And then I have meetings with my colleagues in the county to discuss best practices and exchange ideas, what's working for them, what's working for us, what's not working for anybody, just so that I can try to hone our program to provide better service.
And then we're just looking at other avenues of promoting. And I've seen schools do this, putting it to their marquees just out front. So as parents who might be driving by or walking by are seeing it. So just reminding schools that that's a great, easy tool to promote it on, and planning on doing a phone call blast to all students district-wide starting on Monday. We did that initially back in the spring, and that seemed to help to get things going. And then it was really just through word of mouth that helped keep it going. So we're hoping that by just front-loading the messages, that will help bring our numbers up again. They already are climbing, which is great to see, but hopefully that will just help. And in combination with what Jeremy mentioned, just looking at the school schedules, because we did hear that feedback from our staff and families that's been difficult. So I think that's great to be just trying to pull it all together and, you know, ultimately make sure that the families who need this are getting this service. Thank you.
And if I could just jump in, Lori or Aaliyah, when we were talking about this, you talked about some constraints we had on outreach directly to families. There's something like if we start calling, we have to call to all of them. We can't just target.
That's correct. In food service, there's shaming laws where everyone needs to be treated equally. So we can't target one particular student group based on a certain criteria versus another. So if we do outreach, we have to outreach to our entire community.
So does that mean that, like, if they had free and reduced lunch last year, you can't say, hey, I saw your application from last year, blah, blah, blah. You can't do any of that?
No.
Okay. So, well, that seems like that's not even an issue right now with the new refund method, right?
Correct, but we're still encouraging every family that comes to pick up a meal bundle to take an application and consider filling it out.
That's good.
So as far as your numbers, I have a quick question. So as far as your numbers, like I'm really concerned about the idea that you know, we have this long pickup window, but school is back in session, and I'm thinking about the kids at like SMS or maybe like Ellis or like Cherry Chase or Cumberland even, who might have gotten free and reduced lunch. I was looking at, my question is, are the kids who are in the, like on the LCAP or in our reports, I went through some of our old like school plans. Are the kids who are socially economically disadvantaged, do most of them qualify for free and reduced lunch, or is that a slightly different number?
No, a large portion of them do qualify for either free or reduced. It's just based on the household income.
So like at Cherry Chase, for example, which is not having meal service right now, if they had like 4% of their kids were socially economically disadvantaged, that'd be like 33 kids, right? Or Cumberland, 6% of their kids, this is from the numbers from before, but about 48 of their kids. So I mean, like those numbers add up, and SMS has like 300, it said from before 300 kids, maybe it's more like 200 now. I don't know what their numbers are, but it's like hundreds of kids who aren't, it's not at their school site. And even though we're like, a lot of times I get the sense that like stuff that's available at the elementary schools where it's Title I and the social workers and everybody knows everybody, like I get the sense that those people are very connected in to the system and to services. And I just worry that these kids who are in maybe these other schools that are not Title I, it's pretty far away. Like I was in a SMS staff room, like stapling something in a wall, and this mom came in and she knocked on the door. I walked up and there was like nothing posted yet about how things had changed. And she knocked and she was looking for lunch, and we went into the office and like, you know, it wasn't clear. Like there was not, so I know things have changed, but I feel like if we don't have, one size doesn't really fit all. And if we don't have an option for a weekly pickup, at least at one of our sites, like, and really advertise that, I feel like we're missing a whole bunch of kids who are entitled to that nutrition and eligible for it and probably could really use it. So, you know, whether it's triple degree weather or asthma inducing strange smoke, or, you know, it's gonna start raining soon, like pushing a stroller with a kid in it to go pick up lunch every day to get that food is gonna be problematic. And the last time they said, oh, well, our neighbors are not doing it. Our neighboring districts are absolutely doing it. And I know that comes into you're looking at their best practices, or I think at one point someone said, I think that the food was a lot more. And it looks like the same food. They're doing videos at Santa Clara Unified. It looks exactly like the same food that's in the lunches right now. Or if there's issues about, well, you can't send food home because they have to refrigerate it and freeze it differently, they send home flyers at other districts. So I know that it can be done. And I know you're saying the food is getting to kids, and it's getting to some kids, but it's not getting to all the kids who need it yet. And I just really challenge us to do better on that.
Okay, so let me interrupt. This is an important conversation. I want us to continue, but let's, if there's any other clarifying questions of the presentation from the board, let's do those quickly. And then let's have our public comment, and then we will have our discussion, which, Bridget, I think that's an important discussion.
Sorry.
So is there any other clarifying questions, board, from the presentation? Okay. I had one, but I don't think I wrote it down, and now let's see if I did write it down. I didn't, so if it comes back to me, I will ask later. Public, if there is any comments on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. We'll wait just a moment in case there is anybody. All right, I'm not seeing anybody. Leah, okay, thank you. Okay, now back to the discussion, Bridget.
Sorry, anyway, I just was, I mean, I was going through the numbers and it looked like in 2019, 2020, we had like 2,300 kids who would have been eligible. And so like 600 meals out of that, or 1,000 like, meal bundles or whatever, like we just have, there is just a population out there that is not getting that food. And I know we can't guarantee they'll all get it because they're not on our site and we can't do that. But, I just want to understand how we're going to, like, if there's a possibility of a more flexible option, even if it's not at every site, we don't change everything. If it's working for our Title I schools, and that's great, but is there a way to add in capacity for something additional for like the middle school kids or the kids at the other sites or who are not at those Title I neighborhoods, but who still have that need?
We're doing the meals at 6 of our sites, correct? So the 4 sites that are not having it are Fairwood, right? Fairwood's one of them, right? So Fairwood, Cumberland, Cherry Chase, and SMS.
Correct.
Right? So it's those 4 sites who don't have the meal option.
Even the ones who do have the meal option, I'm sure there are people who would benefit from, and I don't want to tell people like, hey, if you want your weekly food, just go to the, high school district or go to Santa Clara because they have a 1 day a week pickup. But I feel like if we're not going to do it, we should tell people to do it. And then I know it takes away from our numbers, but it's serving those kids in the community, right?
Do we know, I'm remembering my question now and it's because it's connected. So earlier, I think it was related to so we have the 2 meal things, right? We have the meals through our food service, and then we have the grocery bundle, right? So I think it was when there was the grocery bundle, because that's then only at 4 sites, but it's available for anybody who would qualify. Do we have, and so you showed, we ought to see how many are being picked up at each site. Do we have numbers of like how many students from Ellis are picking up from there, or how many students from Cherry Chase are picking up those groceries, or do we have a way that we can figure that out?
Well, we buy their addresses. I mean, we could see their addresses, but I would think that like it's SMS over the summer, the outreach person there, Miss Bliss.
Let me see if Lori has an answer to the question. Sorry, Bridget. Do we have a way of tracking?
No, as far as food service for Seamless Summer, we don't scan individual student cards. It's a tally sheet, so it's just a check off list. If they pick up a meal, it doesn't matter where they came from or anything.
I thought she was talking about Second Harvest.
And well, both of them. So Lori, for the Seamless Summer, we couldn't do like ask what school site?
No.
Bummer. Okay. And then for the grocery one, is there a possibility?
Yeah, so I know the grocery, the outreach liaisons are double checking, like I guess the list that the pretty lengthy list that they have, they cross-reference with free and reduced students at their site, and try to, I guess to your point, Michelle, or something about the kind of the informal network, like they're able to get the word out. In addition, we do know that there are students from other sites that take advantage of the groceries, not just at the 4 schools, if that makes any sense. But they do double check the list. So.
But like this summer, the SMS person, Miss Bliss, like she took it upon herself, and she was like raising money and feeding families on her own from SMS, and it almost seemed like there was a disconnect as far as like understanding what was actually available for SMS families and for families that weren't in that other network, you know what I mean? So,
I know we're also exploring some mobile sites. I don't know, Rob, I don't know how far along we are in that planning, if you can talk a little bit about that.
No, as far as that goes, really waiting to hear a little more about the locations of the families in need specifically, as far as where we would be possibly delivering them to. Lori and I have discussed some of the logistics as far as how it would look in regards to transporting meals and getting them into some perhaps more centralized distribution points other than just the school sites.
So that could be helpful. For example, like we're going to extend the middle school lunch period, but still, depending on where you are, say in the Columbia neighborhood, it doesn't matter, whichever half of the district you're in, it might be a bit of a trek to get to a school. So we're going to try to come up with some other sites, bring the meals, and we have to have a food service worker there. And
but if it's a daily thing, I mean, like, this is the thing. It's like the rain is coming, right? Like the murder hornets. I mean, it's 2020. We need some flexibility for people. I just, I don't know.
So Bridget, I appreciate that there are other models out there. And I think that we can be flexible, but we also need to understand what it is that families need. Can we add, can we ask all families then of what we might be able to provide, what might match with them? Can we ask that directly instead of guessing? If we ask all families and those families who choose to respond?
Maybe
yeah,
it
so
could
we
be
can
in a survey that goes out next week.
Right.
Well, and also, like, we could also put part of that survey maybe as a hard copy or something when people pick up their lunches, because, you know, or have them like check a box or something, because honestly, like, they might be coming every day, and it might be like, they might say, oh yeah, I love coming every day. We get out of the house and we walk and it's lovely. Or they might be saying, yeah, I'd really much rather just come once a week. That would be awesome. So maybe we could also ask them. But I mean, the numbers difference is like, it's between, you know, over 1,000 kids that we're talking about. I don't know. I've been food insecure before in high school, so I don't.
Yeah, we're with you. You know, Bridget, so,
I mean, I just.
So we're doing the daily. We're investigating adding sites. We're doing bi-weekly, right? That's a little different, but it's much larger amounts of food. And so what you're asking us to do, and what we'll continue to investigate, is the weekly. So we have the daily and we have the bi-weekly. And what you're asking us to do is look at weekly. So we can do that. We can do that too.
Well, the bi-weekly is different. It's groceries. And it's like 2 chickens and a thing of eggs and butter, and like it's totally different than like a week of like nukable meals, you know, like pizza pockets and tacos.
Of course it's different, and that speaks a little bit to what like Nancy was referring to as having options that meet families' needs. And then the other concept that I learned from community services is a lot of the services that they bring, or whether it's a backpack or kids' shoes, or if it's food, or it's help with the rent, it's all in service of providing money to a family so that they can stay afloat, right? So some families have more access to food and less access to money for the rent, and some have less of an issue with the rent and more problems with the food. I'm really simplifying it here. So yeah, providing options really makes sense. I don't disagree with that at all. Like that's the whole concept of our Sunnyvale Community Service, which is actually different than many other community services organizations. So yeah, I think we can look at, I mean, I like your idea, Bridget, of like, what would it take to try one of the sites if it was once a week? I don't know. We haven't totally explored that, but let's take a look.
So I guess the other paradigm is that more people are needing to go back to work as the economy and options open up.
Yeah.
So schedules are different.
Mm-hmm.
So asking families what they need, what do you need now, as far as time and frequency may be appropriate, because that paradigm also has changed from spring to now.
Okay.
I would say I really appreciate the progress that's made, even just in the last couple of weeks, right? As we've been able to open up. I mean, I think we all agree that our numbers are not where we want them to be, but it is great to see that, right? There are less people who are going hungry than probably were a few weeks ago. So I'm grateful for that. I liked the idea of the, survey, so we can really kind of understand what the needs are and what the preferences are. And I would say, we've kind of talked about this, but the two questions that have kind of been in my head is, which I think we're doing them, but just I want to articulate is, what are our different options to get the meals to more of our students in need, right? And I've heard some of that, and I'm grateful for that. And then the other question is, how will we know if the students who need the meals are receiving them? And it sounds like that's kind of tricky, but I feel like that's still an important question. So those are kind of, not to answer right now, but just as we continue this process, those are the questions that I feel like are important ones we need to try to figure out and answer. Board, is there any other questions or comments before we go on to the next item?
No, I just want to say, Bridget, I appreciate your passion around this and you digging into the numbers, and I appreciate staff's willingness to explore and be open-minded. And I just think it's awesome to try to do better. And I really hope that we can. It's great.
So my last comment is that the advocacy that we've been working on is to extend the program, extend the programs that give us the maximum flexibility so that we can meet families' needs. It was unfortunate that the paradigm shifted and that messaging was a barrier when we switched programs, and that it takes much, people here know, and it takes so much longer to get the yes, we're back into people's minds, especially now when there's so much under pressure. So I appreciate the continuing opportunities that we're giving as we move forward to make sure that people are hearing that opportunities are available to them to meet basic needs. And thank you for your creativity, staff.
Thank you. All right, board, anything else? Are you ready to move on? Okay. Thank you, everybody. We are now on to item 9A, the approval of the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, also known as the LCP, which is replacing the LCAP this year. And Ms. Ahuja.
Thank you. We're bringing the plan to you for approval and adoption. And the two suggestions that were made by board members have been reflected in this update. And just want to share that the next step is that we will send the plan to the County Office of Education. And unlike the LCAP, the county does not approve this plan. However, we work really closely with them and with their guidance in creating the plan in the first place. I do also want to clarify that this is a roadmap, and it just gives us a snapshot of conditions that we are planning for at this point, and knowing that not everything in the plan is going to stay exactly the way it is. So if we come back in person, or if we, schedules change, things are going to change. It's really to have some sense of accountability for how we're going to support the learning continuity and track attendance of our students. So the request is for you to approve the plan as presented.
Thank you, Mala. Public, if there is any comments on this agenda item, please use the raise hand feature now. We'll wait just a moment. All right, not seeing any. All right, board, is there a motion?
I'll move that we approve the Sunnyvale School District Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, LCP.
I'll second.
Board, is there any comments?
I have a question. Do we have to amend this, or is this really, like you said, it's a snapshot in time? Like, will we have to amend it if our plans change, or is that just a different form?
No, we don't have to amend it. What we have to do next is by the middle of December, we have to give a budget overview for parents to get ready for the writing of the next LCAP in spring. This is just a stopgap measure for now to see how we've opened school and what our plans are.
Thank you. Board, any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. We are now on to item 10, the consent agenda items. If there are any public comments on any consent agenda items, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
A second.
Board, is there any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. There is no closed session tonight, so we are on to future meetings. Our next meeting is Thursday, October 1st at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And then we just want to quickly, so that's the meeting in October where we'll do our equity reflections. So I just wanted to see if there's someone who would someone on the board who'd be interested in doing the next equity reflection. I kind of figured the first few will see if there's board members. If there's not, then we'll open to staff. If there's staff members who also want to lead discussion. So is there someone on the board who's interested in leading that discussion next time?
Did Mike, I thought Mike, you sent out that thing though. Did everybody listen to any of those podcasts, the Nice White Parents or no? Or I had an idea. I don't know if you're interested. I don't know if you've read the book of, it's, how to be anti-racist or something. And then, but there was also there was some short interviews with him too. So if you want to read the book, we could read the book, but I don't know what people's time is like, but there's some short interviews with him that were good. They weren't as long as like a TED Talk as an hour, but they were shorter.
So if you find what you feel would be a representative interview that would be less than 10 minutes and press that out. I'm trying to be real and make it accessible for everybody. It will either work or not.
I don't know what else. I think it can be more than 10 minutes, right? I think trying to read a whole book in the next couple of weeks is not a realistic ask. But at least for me personally, something that might take me 30 to 45 minutes to read or watch, unless others feel like that's too much, I feel like that's a reasonable.
I don't mind like the book idea. I just want to make sure that we all have access to the book, and maybe identifying a particular chapter would be good. That would be a good ask for the in-between time. But I'm not necessarily worried about like, I appreciate concern and the consideration. I just, I'm looking, I just want to go in depth, and if it's quality and something we want to talk about, then let's do it.
So Bridget, I don't think we need to decide what the thing is. So Bridget, if you want to do the next one, if you're good with that, and you can just, in the next few days, maybe think about whether it's a podcast or part of that book, a chapter. I mean, I think we all trust whatever you pick will be great for a discussion. And then you can just send it to Mike to kind of push out to everybody.
Yeah, you and I can talk about it, Bridget. And
okay.
Then, like one idea I had is like, maybe if we were thinking book, we could do excerpt from the book. And if people really liked it, then we read the whole book or not. But you and I can talk and plan something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That sounds
So
good.
Bridget, does that sound good? You'll do the next one? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then just you guys can have it ready to send out at the same time as, the packet goes out, which gives you some time. Okay, I think that is everything. Unless there's anything else, we will adjourn. All right, I adjourn our meeting at 10:17.